And we are live. Merry Christmas, folks. Let me get in the middle here. Ho, ho, ho. It is a psyched out Christmas themed. Don't mind my bird eating microphone windscreen. Hello. Welcome. It's actually Christmas Eve. You're never late to a mythical astronomy stream. We're always around a few minutes behind. You know. So it's a Hodor stream today. That's right, Hodor. Hodor, the Song of Ice and Fire character, directly named after a Norse god who is Hodor. It's the same sound as in Odin. It's a kind of a DTH sound. You can see it on the screen here in the name Hodor. And Hodor is a Norse god tied to Balder. And Balder and Hodor, they're associated with a goddess named Nanna. So not only is Hodor named after Hodor, but Old Nan, who is Hodor's great-grand-nana, is also a Norse goddess associated with Hodor and Balder. And as you might guess, Bran kind of plays the role of Balder. And so we're going to get into that. This is something I've always wondered about, and I've never been able to quite put it together. So I crawled into the Balder and Hodor mythology, which has a lot to do with winter mythology, Christmas season, all that. And I think I figured out what George is doing with Hodor and Hodor. And it's very interesting and satisfying. And that will kick us off into the wider symbolism of Hodor. So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. And just to give you a quick idea, Hodor symbolizes the Weirwoods. He symbolizes a king of winter and the last hero, and he tells us something about the others as well. And of course, all three of those things are closely related. So the Hodor symbolism is a lot more than you might expect. It is going to talk about some of the crucial part of the northern part of the story. Like I said, the last hero, the others, the Weirwoods, and one of the thing I want to really begin to make clear to you is that the Weirwood net got Hodored, okay? So when I talk about Azor Ahai invading the Weirwood net in the original hive mind consciousness of the trees getting pushed out into the cold, and that hive mind becoming the others, that is the Weirwood net being Hodored, okay? Essentially. It's mind invaded, and it is left in a fallen state of some kind. That is essentially what happens. So you can picture Hodor cowering in the corner of his own mind while Bran runs the ship as similar to the others being pushed out of the Weirwood net. Because remember, being pushed out of the Weirwood net, I sometimes talk about that as a partition in the Weirwood net. And the others, if the Greenseers are in the warm green sea, the others are in the cold frozen pond. And the ice wall itself that divides Westeros between the green lands of the living and the frozen lands of the dead mimics this idea of a partitioned Weirwood net. And the others do seem to still be able to use the Weirwoods in some way. And so, yes, I speak a lot of times of the others being exiled from the Weirwoods, but I do believe it is more correct to speak of a partitioned Weirwood net and that their half is dead. And that's why they are so often associated with dead Weirwood, cut Weirwood, and petrified Weirwood. So the Weirwood net got Hodored. And so the Hodor will tell us a little bit about the story of the Weirwood net. Now, Hodor, like I said, when Bran inhabits him, they become a warrior together. And that is a model of the King of Winter / last hero, which we'll get into. In that famous scene where Bran is inhabiting Hodor as they fight their way to the entrance to Bloodraven's cave, Hodor gets frozen tears, so ice eyes, and his snot freezes in his beard, so he gets a snowbeard. And the snowbeard happens a few times. And of course, Hodor is wielding a King of Winter iron sword from the crypts. So just as two of the Kings of Winter are named Jon Ice Eyes and Edric Snowbeard, Hodor appears with Ice Eyes Snowbeard and King of Winter sword as a sort of frozen giant being inhabited by a Stark Greenseer child. So that's a weird symbolic makeup of the last hero, which I will try to explain through the course of these things. And yes, the door symbolism is very important. Obviously, Hodor is tied to doors. His name turns out to be, as we learned from the show, and this is similar to the book reality, Hodor's name is a contraction of hold the door, and Hodor apparently does get his mind scrambled in some sort of door-holding, time-loopy event involving Bran and his escape from the Weirwood cave. We suspect that it will be potentially different, such as where the door is, and one of our smart myth heads in the past figured out that Hodor's real name, Walder, alludes to where the door is going to be. Walder, wall, door. So the door that Hodor is going to hold is likely a door in the wall, likely the Black Gate at the Night Fort, or potentially a similar such Weirwood gate. And I found new symbolism today to back up that theory. So we'll talk about that. Weirwood doors, Hodor holding the door, and what that has to do with Hodor, the Norse god as well. Yeah, damn. I'm trying to drop some bombs here at the beginning, hook you guys, and let you know this is going to be a good stream to watch. I didn't start on time, Orange Tabby. I was like 8 minutes late. And thank you. I hear my phone beeping. That means somebody is probably supporting me with PayPal. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ooh, better plug my phone in. It's about to die. Yes. PayPal from Matthew and Kyle earlier today. And from, oh, yes. Let's hang on a second. Appreciate that. I'll check that out in a second, see if there's any questions that came in with that. And of course, you can support the program through the paypal.me link in the description below, and you can attach a question with that as well. Weirwood arrows and the mistletoe spear remind me of each other. Baby the Bard says, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's going to be a lot of things we're going to take from the Hodor story. So let's get into that. Oh, and let's see. Is there any other things I want to lay out? No. Let's talk about Balder and Hodor and Nana first, and then we will start reading I've got a lot of Hodor quotes pulled for us to analyze, and sometimes there's a little bit of lag right at the beginning of the stream, guys. Just be chill, and it will catch up. That is just the stream buffering. Apparently, that is a thing that happens now with YouTube. So, story of Hodor and Balder and Nana goes like this. Balder is the son of Odin and Frigg, and his name means shining or bright one. He is beautiful and beloved of everyone, and he's very nice, and he's very popular. Unfortunately, he starts having bad dreams about his death. So everyone's worried about that, and Odin, in disguise, journeys to the underworld to raise a seeress, because that's what Odin does when he needs to, like, if he doesn't know something, that's how far he has to go to learn. To the underworld, he's got to raise like a dead seeress or something. He does this a few times. So he's trying to learn Balder's potential fate. And it turns out down in hell, they are preparing for Balder to arrive. There's a great festival. They're feasting. They're all happy. And Odin's like, what the hell's going on? And before they figured out Odin's disguise, he learns that, yes, they are planning to kill Balder, okay? And so he comes back, and Frigg, his mother, decides to try to prevent this death by making literally everything in creation swear an oath never to harm Balder. And she gets that oath from everything except for the plant mistletoe, which she overlooks because it's small and harmless, and what could it do? So what happens is the Norse deities then begin to make sport of Balder's invincibility. They throw stuff at him. Everything bounces off. He's invincible. Ha, ha, ha. It's big sport. Now, Loki, the trickster, he, in disguise, tricks Frigg into revealing the secret of Balder's invulnerability, which is the mistletoe. Loki goes and finds it. He makes a mistletoe spear, and he gives it to blind Hodor, which is the brother, who is the brother of Balder. Now, Hodor is a blind god, and so he's not participating in the fun games of throwing stuff at Balder. And Loki gives him the spear and says, oh, why don't you join in the games? And so he does, and he throws the mistletoe spear. It pierces Balder's heart, and he dies. The game stops. The entire world, in fact, is sad and mourns the death of Balder. It's this great mourning, and his funeral everybody comes. Dwarves and giants, ice and fire giants, everybody comes to his funeral, right? And so Hodor is essentially fooled into killing Balder. He's sorry too. He just didn't mean to do it. So everyone in the world is grieving, and Balder's death is actually the first sign of Ragnarok. So it's very bad news. And at Balder's funeral, they put him in a Viking boat, and they're trying to push it out, but they can't push it out into the water. And so they ask the strongest giantess to come, and she's able to push it into the water, but she has to push so hard that it causes an earthquake. So similar to the beginning of Ragnarok Omen, it's very cataclysmic things are happening here with Balder's death. So then his wife, who is Nanna, she dies from grief looking at when she goes to pay her last respects. And so they put her in the boat too. She's dead as well. And so Frigg, she's not willing to accept Balder's death. And so she asks if there's anyone who will journey to the underworld to try to resurrect Balder. And so the volunteer is Hermodr. Hermodr. And let me actually make this bigger on the screen so you guys maybe can read along better. Yeah, there we go. So Hermodr, he's a different son of Odin, and he volunteers, and he actually rides Sleipnir, Odin's horse, into the underworld. And this journey takes 9 nights. 9. So just like Odin, for 9 nights hanging on Yggdrasil, and there's 9 realms attached to Yggdrasil. Of course, it takes 9 days to ride Sleipnir into the underworld. And Hermodr pleads with Hel, the mistress of Hel. And speaking of the sorrow that everyone has for Balder, everyone is so sad. And so Hel says, well, if that's true, then everyone would be weeping for him. And so she says, if everyone weeps for him, I'll let him go. And Hermodr returns, tells the gods, and everyone does in fact weep for Balder, except for one giantess, who turns out to be Loki in disguise. Wah, wah. And so Balder can't be resurrected. In Norse style, it's got an unhappy ending, right? But Ragnarok needs to happen. Balder can't come back until after Ragnarok. And in some later versions of the myth, he is resurrected after Ragnarok. So, what does it mean? What does it mean? So there's an older version. It turns out that this Balder and Hodor myth is a cycle of the seasons myth. And it predates a lot of other Norse mythology. It has roots in Germanic, Proto-Indo-European mythology that is much older. And essentially, Balder, the bright god, he is a sky god. He represents the bright sky, not the sun, but like the bright daylight sky. And Hodor, he is an underworld god. That's why he's blind. So he represents the darkness and the winter. And Nanna is essentially the summer. That's the best interpretation for her. She is the summer. And that's why she dies with Balder. So Balder being the bright sky, his wife is the summer. They die at the same time at the hands of the winter god, Hodor. Now, Hodor, let's get into the etymology because this is super interesting. Hodor comes from, it means the slaughterer, and the root word there, had, means war, slaughter, or killing. And when you add an R suffix in Norse mythology, it personifies a word into a being. It's like adding an ER to kill to make killer. Okay, so Hodor is the slaughterer. And what he's slaughtering is the day or the summer. So he represents nighttime in the winter and the power of the winter to kill the sun, to kill the summer, to kill the daylight, okay? So, an interesting detail, there's another Norse god called Ullr, who is the god of winter and skiing. It's actually just another name for Hodor. And you might remember there's a house Ullr of the Hellholt. So even though it's hot down in the Hellholt, it's still underworld for the Ullrs. So it's just a little Hodor tidbit. But okay, so a couple interesting things here. When we talk, the root word Other that's in Odin refers to shamanic madness and frenzy. It also refers to a feeling or state of mind or song, but ones that have to do with magic. All right, so that is the same, this word Hermodr, that has the same word Other in it. So Hermodr means war spirit, essentially bravery. It's the spirit of warriors that inhabits them. So when they personify that into a being, a god, Hermodr, that's essentially a warrior deity. He represents the ideal warrior or the archetype of a warrior. And so he goes into the underworld to try to resurrect Balder. Balder, again, represents summer, the daylight, the sky, the bright sky. And so you can see why his death is the beginning of Ragnarok, right? This is the sky god. He dies and at the hands of the underworld god. So now Ragnarok is going to happen. That all makes sense, right? And that's why we get the earthquake with the giantess and all that stuff. So Hermodr, this is where it gets really interesting and begins to sound a lot like Ice and Fire. Hermodr, with, this war spirit full of Other, the spirit of Odin, this god takes the place of Odin and rides Odin's Sleipnir into the underworld. Well, we know that all the Odin mythology is shamanism, right? I mean, excuse me. We do know that. That's what it is. It's all about shamanism, especially the Sleipnir stuff. And so the Hermodr story, it turns out to have to do with the Ulfhednar and the Berserkir. And so there is this whole thing where the warrior rides Sleipnir into hell and takes 9 nights to get there. And the reason why it sounds like Odin's ritualistic hanging on Yggdrasil is because this is in fact referencing to a shamanic ceremony. And here is the actual ceremony. So what they would do, the Viking New Year, it happens at Halloween. And that is the beginning of winter. And so to sort of mimic this myth of Hermodr seeking after Balder, which is the return of the summer and the sun and all that stuff, Viking warriors would go out on a 9-day hunt of winter animals like wolves and bears, which they felt personified the winter spirits. But they would do this after hanging their clothes in trees. So then they would become naked, but then they'd paint themselves up to look like corpses. And they're essentially, this is all in imitation of Odin. They hang their clothes in the trees to simulate Odin's hanging. Then they become corpses, like Odin has died. And so now they are zombies. They go hunting after wolves and bears. This is when men can become Berserkir and Ulfhednar, which are bear and wolf warriors. And they do that by hunting bears and wolves, skinning them, and then wearing their pelts. Because that's, of course, the signature image of an Ulfhednar or Berserkir warrior. He's naked except for, the bear or the wolf pelt. And full of this spirit of Other, this crazy, frenzied warrior spirit that's tied to Odin and also Hermodr. Okay? And so they go on a 9-day hunt, and by killing these winter animals, these winter spirits, they are paving the way for Balder to be resurrected. So this sounds a lot like The Last Hero and the Green Zombies, does it not? Okay, so the sun is gone, Ragnarok is incipient, it's winter, and these wolf and bear warriors have to become dead. They have to be hung on a tree like Odin, become zombie people, and then become skin changers. Become wolf and bear skin changers, and go north and fight winter spirits to bring the sun back. So you can see how where do I even start? I mean, you can see how this is one of the direct inspirations for the journey of the last hero, as we have deciphered it, being that the last hero's 12 companions were resurrected and became cold hands like skin changer zombies. Just as Jon Snow is dead and will soon become a resurrected skin changer zombie who seems to parallel the last hero and will be journeying north and all that stuff. Jon will probably... no, I've checked out some Ocean Keltoy videos. I'm a fan. I should quickly give a shout out to some of the videos that I watched. Jon Solo, he does the Strange Mythology series, the Weird Mythology. Jon Solo, I watched, just pull up my YouTube history. I can never remember something like this when I need to. It's terrible. But yeah, I'll just drop these links in the chat. I definitely am regurgitating videos that I have watched from trusted sources. And so let me just... Craig and Ford. Yep, that's one, of course. A lot of you guys in the chat know that channel. So I will just grab that link. Sorry, I got to make this smaller real quick. Sorry for the dead air, guys. It's just hard to do a couple things. I can't do more than one thing at once. So there is one video. That's Craig and Ford. Craig and Ford. And... here's the one. Norse Magic and Beliefs. This is a really good channel that I want to turn you guys on to. Because he's really tuned into the shamanic angle of Norse mythology, which I think is really important. I don't think you can understand Norse myth without thinking about shamanism. And then, like I said, Jon Solo, whose channel you can look up real easy. Boom. So, now that I've given you the basics of the Hodor mythology and Balder and stuff, there's one other thing I want to tell you, which is the older version, okay? The older version is much simpler. It doesn't have all this stuff about playing the game, throwing stuff at Balder and seeing who... It doesn't have any of that. So in the older version, it's very simple. Hodor and Balder, they are simply a pair of brothers or a paired set of deities that represent, again, the underworld and the sky god. And it's very simple. Balder has the love of the goddess Nanna, who may have ancient roots shared with Inanna, from Babylonian and other Middle Eastern myth. That is debatable, but because this is such an old Proto-Indo-European myth, I would say that it is possible, because the oldest Proto-European myths do have a shared origin in Near Eastern myth, but that is a story for another day. The point is, Balder has the love of Nanna, and Hodor is jealous. And so Hodor learns the secret of Balder, which is still mistletoe. He's vulnerable to mistletoe. And so he goes and he learns the secret of mistletoe. He seeks it out, and he confronts and kills Balder. Simple as that. So it's more of a simple brothers fighting type myth. So this is interesting because, of course, George is using a lot of Cycle of the Seasons mythology in his story, because he's got the Long Night as kind of the villain of the story. It's not really the others, it's more the Long Night that kills everyone. So, Cycle of the Seasons mythology is very useful to George, and it turns out that the Odor mythology, the Hodor and the Balder mythology, is Cycle of the Seasons mythology. So that really helped me understand what George is doing with it. And when George works with myths like this, it's very important to know that he's not doing it in a strict one-to-one fashion. So it's not as simple as Hodor is going to do all the exact things as Hodor. It's more like George is using the themes of this story throughout the story. And so we'll see that when we read the Hodor quotes. You'll see how Bran plays the role of Balder at times and various other things. And there's also a little bit of Atlas, which I will mention with Hodor. All right, so let's see. Is that everything I want to say? Yes. Let's go ahead and get into some of these Hodor quotes. And as we read through, we'll be referencing a lot of these ideas. So this is from Clash of Kings. This is when the wolves are chasing Mira and Jojen, or they're threatening Jojen in particular, because Jojen is pressing Bran about his dreams, because Bran, as the Balder character, has bad dreams about his death, about falling to his death, right? So it says, only then did Bran remember that they were not alone. He cupped hands around his mouth. Hodor, he shouted. Hodor, Hodor. He was badly frightened and somehow ashamed. They won't hurt Hodor, he assured his treed friends. A few moments passed before they heard a tuneless humming. Hodor arrived half-dressed and mud splattered from his visit to the hot pools. But Bran had never been so glad to see him. Hodor, help me, chase off the wolves, chase them off. Hodor went to it gleefully, waving his arms and stamping his huge feet, shouting Hodor, running first at one wolf and then the other. So, Hodor comes into the Godswood, half naked, and chases the wolves off. And did not just say that Hermodor journeys into the underworld to save Balder, and this ritual is replayed by warriors who take off their clothes, hang them in a tree, which is what Hodor does, and then they go hunting wolves. And so here, Hodor is basically appearing as a Ulfhednar or a Berserkir, as a naked warrior who's just left his clothes in the trees, and he's chasing the wolves off. So I just thought that was a good way to start. Very simple sort of demonstration of George working with this mythology here, okay? Have a holly jolly Christmas. Thanks for everyone for coming out. Almost 300 watching. Yeah, so one of the things, Hodor is actually like Balder in his innocence, right? Like Balder is this innocent person who's killed tragically. Hodor is a total innocent who is Hodored tragically. So that's one of the ways in which it flip-flops. And that's why I said it's not a rigid one-to-one. George works with the themes of the story artfully to suit his own story. So here's a good one with Balder Bran and Hodor as the darkness. Because remember, the idea is... Oh, the chat's frozen. Thank you. Thank you. So the idea is that Hodor, as the god of the underworld, represents the winter. And so him killing Balder, that's simply a personification of winter taking over from the summer. Standard cycle of the season stuff, right? So the prince sniffed at him. This is a wolf dream, I should say. This is the end of one of Bran's wolf dreams. And Bran refers to himself as the prince in these. So the prince sniffed at him and licked the blood from fur and torn flesh. When the old wolf gave a soft whimper, the dire wolf turned away. He was very hungry now, and the prey was his. Hodor. The sudden sound made him stop and snarl. The wolves regarded him with green and yellow eyes, bright with the last light of day. None of them had heard it. It was a queer wind that blew only in his ears. He buried his jaws in the deer's belly and tore out a mouthful of flesh. Hodor, Hodor. No, he thought, I won't. It was a boy's thought, not a direwolf's. The woods were darkening all about him until only the shadows of the trees remained and the glow of his cousin's eyes. And through those and behind those eyes, he saw a big man's grinning face and a stone vault whose walls were spotted with niter. The rich, warm taste of blood faded on his tongue. No, don't. I want to eat. I want to... Hodor, 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 Hodor. Hodor chanted as he shook him softly by the shoulders, back and forth and back and forth. He was trying to be gentle. He always tried, but Hodor was 7 feet tall and stronger than he knew. and his huge hands rattled Bran's teeth together. "No," he shouted angrily. "Hodor, leave off. I'm here. I'm here." Hodor stopped, looking abashed. Hodor? The woods and the wolves were gone. Bran was back again, down in the damp vault of some ancient watchtower that must have been abandoned thousands of years before. It wasn't much of a tower now. Even the tumbled stones were so overgrown with moss and ivy that he could hardly see them until you were right on top of them. Tumble Down Tower, Bran had named the place. It was Mira who found the way down into the vault, however. So, here we have Bran. He's literally inhabiting his wolf, whose name is Summer. Okay? So just as Balder has the love of the goddess Nanna, Bran has a wolf named Summer, and Nanna is the goddess of summer. And who is calling him back to the darkness and taking him away from the warm life in summer? It's Hodor, the god of the underworld and winter. And he literally pulls Balder Bran down into this dark underworld where his eyes and ears are stopped up. And remember, this is parallel to the scenes in the crypts where Bran similarly doesn't want to be dragged back to his body where it's dark and he's blind. And of course, Hodor, blind god in the underworld. And in the darkness, all men are blind. That is the point. So here you see, and I even like how the word Hodor begins as a wind in Bran's ear that he can only hear. And remember the word Odor, it means spirit or song. And so this is literally like Bran hearing this little spirit or song on the wind, and it's pulling him back into the underworld. So it's very visceral Norse mythology happening with that one. And again, Hodor, the god of the darkness, pulling Balder Bran into the underworld. Very fun, very fun. So here's a bit about Balder Bran's bad dreams. Sitting cross-legged under the Weirwood, Jojen Reed regarded him solemnly. "It would be good if you left Winterfell, Bran." "It would?" "Yes, and sooner rather than later." "My brother has the green sight," said Mira. "He dreams things that haven't happened, but sometimes they do." "There is no sometimes, Mira." I looked past between them, him sad, her defiant. "Tell me what's going to happen," Bran said. "I will," said Jojen, "if you'll tell me about your dreams." The Godswood grew quiet. Bran could hear leaves rustling and Hodor's distant splashing from the hot pools. He thought of the Golden Man and the Three-Eyed Crow. Okay, so real quick. He's thinking about Hodor, and then in the next sentence, the Golden Man. That's Jaime here, but of course, Balder is the Golden Man. So that's a real quick Hodor-Balder reference. Then it goes on. He says he thinks about the Golden Man and Three-Eyed Crow, remembered the crunch of bones beneath his jaws and the coppery taste of blood. "I don't have dreams. Maester Luwin gives me sleeping draughts. Do they help?" "Sometimes," Mira said. "All of Winterfell knows you wake at night shouting and sweating, Bran. The women talk of it at the well, the guards in their hall. Tell us what frightens you so much." So just like Balder, Bran has these bad dreams about the future, and everyone's trying to find out about them and do something to save Bran. Like, "Oh, you should really leave Winterfell. You might die." So pretty cool. Now this, I believe, is a reference to Atlas here. But I just want to read this. These are two quotes. This is from Bran's coma dream. And it says, he saw Hodor, the simple giant from the stables, carrying an anvil from Mikken's forge, hefting it onto his shoulder as easily as another man might heft a bale of hay. At the heart of the Godswood, the great white weirwood brooded over its reflection in the black pool, its leaves rustling in a chill wind. When it felt Bran watching, it lifted its eyes from the still waters and stared back at him knowingly. So, Hodor is carrying an anvil as easily as another man might heft a bale of hay. But there's another, in the same chapter, it says that Hodor lifted Bran as easily as if he were a bale of hay. So is Bran an anvil in some sense? The Branville? I'm actually not sure. I just wanted to include this in case anybody had a clue, because I feel like I'm not getting something here. But I do believe this is kind of portraying Hodor as Atlas. And remember, Atlas is a giant who holds up the world. or in some versions, he holds up the sky. So Atlas would be a symbol of the world tree that holds up the sky and the world. And that's why he's like a pillar. Okay. And Atlas also is the god of astronomy, because he's the cosmic axis on which the entire stars turn. That is the same role as the cosmic world tree, so it makes sense that Hodor could be both Atlas and a symbol of the Weirwoods. And so he's carrying around an anvil, and he's also carrying around Bran. And Bran has the consciousness of the Weirwoods inside of him, so it's kind of like carrying around the world. I don't know, but happy holidays from Namo. Let's cup. And then let's see. Let me check this PayPal real quick. Just a Merry Christmas. Will Hodor have a last stand moment in the books, but not necessarily in the same location? Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's going to be at the Night Fort. I'm pretty sure. We'll get to that. But yes. 20 David Lightbringer memberships. What is that? Alabaster, 275. That is very kind of you. Look at this. We've got 20 new squishers. That's incredible. Wow. Merry Christmas to me and everyone. We've got lots of squishers now. We're infested with squishers. Wow. Let's have a round of applause. So Long to Lunk. I was thinking about the hammer and the... If Bran is the anvil, who's the hammer? Perhaps Jon... What does it mean? You know, two forces that will crush the others between them or something like that? I'm not sure. It's a little cryptic. That's, my fingers feel webby already. Look at all the green squishers in the chat. All right. Very generous. Thank you. If you got a membership, make sure to get in on the Discord. That's right. We've got 20 new Discorders. I just dropped the link 2 days ago, so there is a fresh link. If you click on the members tab of the YouTube page, you will see it there. They expire after a week, so. Oh, Baelor Breakspear. So kind of like Balder. His name is kind of like Balder. Yeah, okay. And he kills his brother, too. Oh, good point. So this is why George likes working with complementary mythologies. But yes, Balder Breakspear, he kills his brother Maekar. So again, it's flip-flopped instead of Balder dying. And Baelor's death... Oh, no, it's Maekar that kills... I'm sorry, I do have it backwards. Okay, yeah. So Balder Breakspear is in fact killed by his brother, and the entire realm mourns. So just like Balder's death. Similarly, when Bran is paralyzed, everyone mourns. Everyone hears about it and is sad. It comes to pay their respects. Even Joffrey has to go pay his respects. More gifted memberships from LGD. Wow, it's Christmas, I guess. I really appreciate the support, guys. And I do, of course, I've been sharing a little bit. I've had some YouTube demonetization issues where the videos get flagged for a day and then they're released and everything's fine. So, appreciate that. Extra support. Fills my heart with warmth. I'm psyched out. What would Nimbledick say about this infestation? Oh, now y'all don't get me started with that now. We don't need a Nimbledick Christmas special. That's not what we signed up for. That does kind of loosen the cobwebs, though. Now that I get into the spirit, I need some whiskey. Where's the whiskey? All right, that's enough. No more Nimbledick. Who did that? Who did that? Who did that? Orange Tabby with a gifted membership. Man, we'll all be squishers in the chat by the end of this. Okay, so let's get back on topic. So like I said, this is all going to come piecemeal. It's a little bit scattered. I apologize. The quotes reference all the different ideas, so I couldn't group them as cleanly as I planned to. But the Weirwoods, of course, are famous for being big trees with a big smile, big bloody smile, and yet they do not talk. Hodor does talk, but he only says one word. He doesn't really talk. He can't communicate. He is mute. And he can understand. The thing is, he can understand speech. Like people give, like, he goes out and picks wild onions. He gathers firewood. Bran tells him stuff. He can't understand everything that's happening. Like the Walders are making fun of him one time, and he doesn't pick up on it. So he is a little bit simple, quote unquote. But he does understand speech, but he can't talk. So his whatever his like speech processing part of his brain is injured. And so he can't speak other than Hodor, but he can understand. So much like the Weirwoods, he can't speak, and he has a big smile. It's always remarked, Hodor, the big stable boy, who smiled so much and took care of his pony and never said anything but Hodor. So silent and smiling like the trees. And it says, the last hero story. Okay, for years he searched until he's despaired of ever finding the children, blah, blah, blah. And the others smelled the hot blood in him and came silent on his trail, stalking him with packs of pale white spiders, big as hounds. The door opened with a bang, and Bran's heart leapt into his mouth in sudden fear, but it was only Maester Luwin, with Hodor looming in the stairway behind him. Hodor, the stable boy announced, as was his custom, smiling hugely at them all. Merry Christmas, Cheryl Baxter. So, one thing I kind of skipped over earlier. The name Other. I think it's first and foremost chosen because the others are otherized, just like the wildlings are otherized. And George is working with reconciliation and otherization as a theme. And so calling them the others is a very clear way to spell out that they originally belonged in the Green Lands, but have been otherized and exiled. So it's a big hint about them being green men kicked out of the Weirwood net, right in their name. However, George noticed that it sounds like the Norse pronunciation of Odor, which is, again, the root word of Odin, and Odor being this shamanic madness. So, the others are spirits. And Odor itself is a word for spirit. It is the spirit of frenzy, the spirit of shamanic song, a state of mind. It is very much a spirit. So the others being spirits that come from this magic tree that is so much like Yggdrasil, Odin's tree. You begin to see how this makes sense. And we've also noticed that characters who have names that sound like others represent the others. The first one that does it is the Night's Watchman Othor. He is one of the two Night's Watchmen who is whited. He's the one that Jon fights in Mormont's chamber. He's got a moon face and blue star eyes, and he is blocking out the world. There's a line like that about it. It's shutting out the world. So it's this moon face getting closer to Jon, shutting out the world. Blue star eyes like meteors, and his name is Othor. He represents the others. Okay? It's important that he's a Night's Watchman because, of course, the Night's Watchman and the others and the brothers are like two sides of the same coin. And so Jon, as a last hero, with the help of his wolf and his sword, he slashes the moon face across the face, and he kills the other. So Othor, other. Then there's Utharide's Wain, one of Catelyn's servants. And that has to do with the ice wagon, the ice wain. Wain is a word for wagon. So Utharide's Wain is actually Other Rides Wain, or Other Rides Wagon. And of course, we know that the North Star in Ice and Fire is part of a constellation called the Ice Dragon. But in a previous George Martin story, before he wrote Ice and Fire, it was the Ice Wagon. That was the constellation. It's basically the Big Dipper is the Ice Wagon. And the Ice Wagon carries souls to the afterlife. So he's referencing his previous work with the name Uther Rides Wain. He's saying the others ride the Ice Wagon. The Ice Wagon is actually now the Ice Dragon. So all these concepts are related. Uther Rides Wain. Let's see, Othor. I have these up here somewhere. Uther Hightower is suspect. Oh, Hothar Umber. He blows a horn of winter in the song. So, I won't belabor the point, but in the sense that Other represents the original Weirwood net. Hodor represents the original Weirwood net. That's the others. The original Weirwood net has been exiled and otherized. That is the others. So they are Odor, essentially. It's pretty tight. Yeah, it's pretty good symbolism. Hopefully I'm explaining it coherently. To be honest, guys, I was struggling with burnout like all week. I was supposed to work on a video all week, and I could not for 4 days. The YouTube stuff got me down, and I had just been working and not sleeping, and then to have the sort of lack of payoff from the YouTube algorithm, I just sort of crashed. And I just caught my inspiration yesterday, and I was talking I put a little note on Instagram. A bunch of people encouraged me. Thank you. Reached out. I mean, they tell you, right? If you're struggling, say something. So I was just like, hey, I'm feeling burnt out. I'm struggling. A bunch of people gave me nice notes. And one of the people that I started chatting with asked a question about Hodor. And I started talking about Hodor symbolism. I was like, this is really interesting. I should do a stream about this. And then I started researching it. And in the course of researching it, I learned a bunch of new stuff, which I've just started to share with you. So I'm very inspired right now. But I just crammed all this into my head in like a day. So hopefully I am relating it coherently. And thank you for your support. It's those of you who have ADHD are probably familiar. Sometimes hyperfocus for days and days and days leads to like kind of a crash. So I'm all right, but that's what happened. Okay, so Hodor the Darkness, Balder Bran streams, the Branville. Hodor's got a big smile like a weirwood. Oh yeah, so the point of explaining the others thing is that this last hero story is interrupted by Hodor right when the others are coming on the last hero. So then Hodor appears looming in the doorway. So it's just kind of a fun little continuation. And there's another line about Hodor being a simple-minded stable boy who dwarfed them all. So that's kind of like in the way that a weirwood tree dwarfs everyone, or the way that the children of the forest are like dwarves gathered around the weirwood tree. It's just a fun little line. And it's Christmas, so shout out to the dwarves, right? And yeah, shout out to all my neurodivergent folks, of course, always. Okay, so this is a fun one. We got to read this. Hodor is hung. And here I'll switch over to the Kindle. And this will be Game of Thrones. Some of the quotes are longer, and I didn't want to copy paste them. So we will occasionally jump over to the Kindle. There we go. All right. The rustling grew louder. Bran heard muffled footfalls and a low humming. And by the way, Hodor is always humming tunelessly. I am not sure what that's about. It reminds me of electricity. But I don't know if that's what George is implying. If anyone has guesses about that, I would love to hear it. It'll come up in several quotes. So if anybody has ideas about the humming, let me know. It's a tuneless humming. Hodor also likes music. He dances when there is music. So I will just say that. Oh, good call, Lucas. Hodor's bathing is like Dunk. We remarked about how Dunk loves to bathe. He bathes a lot. So does Hodor. And of course, in case you didn't know, Bran has the vision of a knight as tall as Hodor kissing old Nan in the Godswood, or kissing a woman in the Godswood, a tall woman who we think is Nan and Hodor. And Hodor is so tall because he's Dunk's descendant. George has said that Dunk has many Dunklings scattered around, so people have played the game of trying to identify the Dunklings. George seems to put clues around them, like Gren at the wall is thick as a castle wall, just like Dunk is. So Gren and Aurochs, or Gren is Aurochs, I'm sorry. Gren seems to be a Dunkling. Orange Tabby with gifted memberships. Thank you, Orange Tabby. Appreciate that. Man, this is all Christmassy in here. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. Nice. Always appropriate. Yeah, Princess Bride and Home Alone. Those are the best Christmas movies. What's up, Kelly Johnson? Is love the death of duty? This was a concept Maester Aemon said. Do you think it will? No, actually, I think that's wrong. I think that's something they're taking too seriously. I don't have really time to get into that. It's kind of off the topic, but no, I think that's actually wrong. I think love is what it's all about. I think George tests us by putting different philosophies in the book that exist in real life and letting his characters play with them. So we'll see what Jon makes of that. But Jon sending away all his friends seems like not like it hasn't worked out very well for him. So Die Hard is best Christmas. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so all right, so the wrestling grew louder. Bran heard muffled footfalls and a low humming, and Hodor came blundering out of the trees, naked and smiling. So again, the naked warrior coming out of the woods, like the Ulfhednar. He must have heard our voices, Bran said. Hodor, you forgot your clothes. Hodor agreed. He was dripping wet from the neck down, steaming in the chill air. His body was covered in brown hair, thick as a pelt. Between his legs, his manhood swung, long and heavy. George does not shunt us the detail here. Osha eyed him with a sour smile. Now there's a big man, she said. He has giant's blood in him, or I'm the queen. Maester Luwin says there are no more giants. He says they're all dead, like the children of the forest. All that's left of them are old bones in the earth that men turn up with plows from time to time. Tuneless humming is like the sound of a horn. Oh, you might have something there. Oh. Okay. Yeah. That's good, Zimmerwald. It kind of makes sense. So yeah, anyway, Hodor is hung. I didn't want to skip this quote. And Osha says, let Maester Luwin ride beyond the wall. He'll find giants there where they'll find him. My brother killed one. 10 foot tall she was, and stunted at that. They've been known to grow big as 12 and 13 feet. Fierce things they are too, all hair and teeth, and the wives have beards like the husbands, so there's no telling them apart. So Hodor, this is real. Like, Dunk and all these people, they really do have giant's blood. Same with the Cleganes. And by the way, I forgot, Sir Gregor the Mountain dwarfs Hodor. So Hodor's like 7 feet tall, like Dunk is about 7 feet tall. Gregor is well over 7. He's closer to 8. So we're getting into the range of like, Gregor shouldn't exist. Like, it's some kind of gigantism. Like, usually people that are that tall, like Manute Bol or George Mirasan or Yao Ming, they are generally not hugely stocky. They're generally kind of stretched looking, right? Yeah, Gregor he's like Goliath of Gath. Exactly. He's biblically large. But of course, in Ice and Fire, we know that giants, like the children of the forest, have been interbred with people. And so there are hybrids. And that's what Osha's about to say. Fierce things. Okay, so the woman take human men for lovers, and it's from them the half-bloods come. So, there you go. Just laying it out. Hodor is a giant. And of course, the Weirwoods are like giants as well. So that's part of his Weirwood symbolism. Okay, let's get back to the notes. So Hodor's hung. He's like Andre the Giant. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Andre the Giant is, how tall was he? He was over 7 feet, wasn't he? And he definitely, Andre the Giant had a disorder and died youngish because of that. Okay, so Lord Wyman's musicians played bravely and well, and this is at the Winter Feast, I believe, here at Winterfell. But harp and fiddle and horn were soon drowned beneath the tide of talk and laughter, the clash of cup and plate. The singers sang good songs, Iron Lances and the Burning of the Ships, and Bear and the Maiden Fair. And Hodor would be the bear, obviously. But only Hodor seemed to be listening. He stood beside the piper, hopping from one foot to the other. And then later it says that Bran sent sweets to Hodor and Old Nan as well, for no reason but he loved them. So that's a good shout out to the original Balder Hodor mythology, where Nana and Balder are together and Hodor is jealous of their love. So it's a love triangle. And so here, Balder loves Hodor and Nana. So it's a cool reference to the myth. Very clear reference to the myth. Who's the maiden fair? I guess that'd be Nissa Nissa. But Andre the Giant was 7'4". Thanks, guys. That's pretty big. Oh, and I just mentioned the Princess Bride, too. Fezzik, are there rocks ahead? If there are, we'll all be dead. Cool. There it is. No more rhymes from you, I mean it. Does anybody want a peanut? Okay, so, yeah, the Umbers are huge, and they live close to the wall. And their sigil has a giant, so they're not even hiding it. Like, yeah, these are facts. All right, so let's get into some of these King of Winter quotes. A lot of them are in this section. Oh, this whole Tyrion. Do I want to read this yet? I think I want to come back to this one. Okay, so this is Hothar Umber's last hero song. Much later, after all the sweets had been served and washed down with gallons of summer wine, and this is the same feast we were just reading from, the food was cleared and the tables shoved back against the walls to make room for the dancing. The music grew wilder, the drummers joined in, and Hothar Umber, Hothar, just take the H off, and it's other. So, and remember that Hodor, the Norse version is Hodor, so Hothar Umber. And again, as the chat just mentioned, Umbers are giants, Hodor's a giant. So Hothar the giant Umber brought forth a huge curved war horn, banded in silver. And this is why I remarked, oh, when the person just said a tuneless humming is a horn sound. So here is Hothar Umber blowing his war horn. And it says, when the singer reached the part in the night that ended, where the Night's Watch rode forth to meet the others in the battle for the dawn, he blew a blast that set all the dogs to barking. 2 Glover men began a spinning skirl on bladder and wood harp. Morris Umber was the first on his feet. He seized a passing serving girl by the arm, knocking the flagon of wine, blah, blah, blah. Amidst the rushes and bones and bits of bread that littered the stone, he whirled and spun her and tossed her in the air. The girl squealed. Others soon joined in. Hodor began to dance all by himself, which is kind of sad, but at least he's dancing. He's happy. So, dancing with myself. Oh, oh. He's you know, a Billy Idol fan. Okay, so Billy Idol. Why did I say Billy Idol? Help me out, somebody. I mean, do I mean Billy? Yeah. Okay, yes, Billy Idol. I was just confusing myself with Billie Holiday and Billie Eilish. I have ADHD. Names are tricky. Okay. You guys know the song. Anyway. That's what happens when I try to do free association. All right. So, or make specific references. It turns into free association. But I think I got that. Okay, so the night that ended. So yeah, the tuneless humming could be a horn, judging from this quote. Because here we have a parallel figure to Hodor, who is Hothor, and he's blowing the horn that leads the Night's Watch out. That would be the Horn of Winter. And like I said, Hodor is going to show us a King of Winter last hero when he joins up with Bran to make a giant knight, if you will. So here from A Game of Thrones, it says Bran stared resentfully at the sweating boys below. So he's watching the boys in the training yard, and he says, if I still had my legs, I could beat them all. He remembered the last time he'd held a sword in his hand when the king had come to Winterfell. It was only a wooden sword, yet he'd knocked Prince Tommen down 100 times. Sir Roderick should teach me to use a poleaxe. If I had a poleaxe with a big long haft, Hodor could be my legs. We could be a knight together. I think that unlikely, Maester Luwin said. Bran, when a man fights, his arms and legs and thoughts must be as one. And of course, we know that Bran and Hodor eventually will become with their thoughts as one, in a sense, because Bran is living inside Hodor's mind and making him walk and fight. So this is big foreshadowing for Bran Hodor becoming a knight together. Pretty cool. And then here it says, when Hodor came bustling in, smiling and humming tunelessly, he found the boy resigned to his fate. And this is when Theon has taken Winterfell, by the way. Together they got him washed and brushed. "The white wool doublet today," Bran commanded, "and the silver brooch. Sir Roderick will want me to look lordly." As much as he could, Bran preferred to dress himself, but there were some tasks, pulling on breeches, lacing his boots, that vexed him. They went quicker with Hodor's help. Once he had been taught to do something, he did it deftly. And this is, again, more indication that Hodor is maybe a little smarter than you might think at first. His hands were always gentle, though his strength was astonishing. "You could have been a knight too, I bet," Bran told him. "If the gods hadn't taken your wits, you would have been a great knight." And of course, that's ironic because Hodor's wits are taken by the old gods who turn out to be Bran. And also potentially Bloodraven or the Weirwood Net. I mean, probably like in the show, Bran will be somewhat manipulated into doing this to Hodor. And this is a good place to pause and mention, again, Balder and Hodor. In the Norse version, it is Loki who tricks Hodor into killing Balder. And so what we are going to get is a flip of that, where Odin, Bloodraven, who is also Loki-like as well as Odin-like, Bloodraven / the Weirwood Net is going to manipulate Balder Bran into Hodoring Hodor. So this is very similar to Loki tricking Balder into killing Hodor. It's just they're flipped. And it shows you the innocence involved. Like Hodor, he's sorry about it. Hodor, rather, when he kills Balder. He regrets it. He's tricked into it in the Norse version. And I forgot to point out earlier in the scene where Bran's in the wolf dream and Hodor is calling him back saying, "Hodor, Hodor." And Hodor is like the darkness pulling Balder Bran back into the underworld. When Bran comes back, he's like, "Okay, I'm here, I'm here." It says Hodor looked abashed. So that's another direct reference to Hodor being abashed and sorrowful that he has killed Balder. So right after Hodor pulls Bran into the dark underworld, he looks abashed. So it's, again, super tight references to the Norse mythology here. I was delighted to find as I researched this. All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick break. We're an hour in, so I'm going to hit you with the funky music. I'll be right back. Love y'all. And we're back. I am going to have to break again soon to get Cleo. I'm going to let her suffer a little longer. She's not going to like this hat. So, everybody having fun so far. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. I have hit you with a lot of information quick. I wanted to definitely get this thing going with a bang because we had a lot of quotes to work through. So again, I hope everyone is taking this information in, and I hope it's coming out coherently. But I feel like if the beginning was a little bit, "Oh my God, what's going on?" As we read these quotes, hopefully you see all these various ideas from the Balder and Hodor mythology being used by George in his own way. So, thank you, Squish. Yeah, there's so many squishers in the chat. There should be extra Cleo emojis now. And yes, I will go get Cleo soon. So this hat is called an ushanka. I assume it is Russian. It seemed appropriate. I do love it. It is just kind of styling. I like it. It's fuzzy, and I wear this out when I go to the club sometimes. It's just fun. All right. So if the gods hadn't taken Hodor's wits, he could have been a knight. Oops. So this is George laying on the irony here. Like, Bran's like, man, you could have been a knight. If the gods hadn't taken your wits, it's such a shame. And of course it's just, I'm going to go get her. She has not stopped crying. I'll give you the other, this is the shorter, funky music. This is the Rhaegar music. It's a big 30 seconds. I'll be right back with Cleo. 1 second. And it's Cleo, everyone. There she is. Close the drawers. Hide your children. It's Cleo. Hi, good girl. Put on a show for everyone. You made us wait. You cried and interrupted the stream. There's lots of pink. Yes, you suit the mood. All right. I'm just putting her on my knee and hoping for the best. I can close this drawer for sure. Drawers are nesting boxes, so we cannot have drawers open. I pull the drawer out and use it as a mouse thing. Okay. Anyways. So, Hodor could have been a knight, Cleo. It's a shame. And if you want, by the way, if you're wondering about the emojis, all you have to do is click the emoji thing here. And if you are a Squisher member, you will have you'll have them there. So you could leave a Garth, for example. Also, you guys are squishers now. You get one free super chat highlighted message a month. So if you have an important comment or chat message, you can use that. All right. So Hodor could have been a knight. So one of the interesting things I noticed that is very cheeky is that Hodor is scared of the crypts, and Hodor does not like the cold pond. And this is definitely, again, George being cheeky here, because the whole idea of Hodor being Hodor is he is the god of the underworld and the winter. But Hodor, he kind of like doesn't want to go, because he's also kind of like Balder. Like I said, innocent and wrongfully hurt by Bran. So Bran, and as you can see already, Bran and Hodor are both doing Balder and Hodor things at different times. Like when Bran, in the future, Hodor's Hodor will be the Balder character. So yeah, George loves to do that. He does that with Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa. You know, Jon is mostly Azor Ahai, but he also does Nissa Nissa stuff, like when he gets murdered. Dany obviously does both as well. So it's not a new concept. And one of the reasons why that happens is because of the cycle of the seasons stuff. You know, the whole idea with the Green Man mythology is that sometimes it's one Green Man who just dies and resurrects, but sometimes it's split out into the Oak and the Holly King, who are brothers, and one represents summer and winter, and they fight each other and take turns resurrecting and dying and stuff. So it's all about endless cycles and that kind of thing. Okay, so the cold pond is an important symbol of the others, right? The very first time we see them, their speech is like the cracking of ice on a winter lake. And we have figured out since then that this is a reference to Dante's Inferno, where Lucifer, as a dragon creature with 3 heads, by the way, is imprisoned in a frozen lake in the 9th circle of hell, waiting to break out at the end of the world, Armageddon, you know, just like Ragnarok. So the idea that the other's voice is like the cracking of the ice on a winter lake, George is saying that their speech is like the breaking of the ice that traps Lucifer the dragon in hell. And Lucifer the dragon in Ice and Fire, who is in the frozen hell, that is Azor Ahai, who became Night's King. And I've always said, if there is a great other, that is the spirit of Azor Ahai in the Weirwood net. But he's not in the warm side. He's in the frozen side. He went over to Night's Queen, who symbolizes like a frozen weirwood tree. Just like Nissa Nissa is like a regular weirwood, and all the Nissa Nissa characters have weirwood symbolism, Night's Queen is like a frozen weirwood tree. And the others are like children of a frozen weirwood tree. Okay? So, the ice cracking, the ice lake, just as the green seers are in the green sea, the others part of the Weirwood net is like a frozen lake, because it works really well with the metaphor, right? It's like living tree, warm green sea, dead frozen tree, frozen lake. These symbols go together. So the frozen lake incorporates this idea of a frozen dragon in hell who is Azor Ahai, Night's King. And it implies the other's invasion as like breaking out of frozen hell, demons that are escaping from hell, which makes perfect sense, right? So this cold pond in the Winterfell Godswood, Hodor doesn't want to swim in it. It's fun. He hates it. He's like terrified of it. And when Mira pops out of it, like Hodor freaks out. He's very upset that anyone was swimming in there. And he also doesn't want to go into the crypts. So it's just kind of funny. It's like he doesn't want to be the underworld god of winter. It's like, I don't want to go in the cot. So the mention of dreams reminded him. This is Bran. I dreamed about the crow again last night, the one with 3 eyes. He flew into my bedchamber and told me to come with him, and so I did. We went down to the crypts. Father was there, and we talked. He was sad. And why was that? Lewin peered through his tube. It was something to do about John, I think. The dream had been deeply disturbing, more so than any of the other crow dreams. Hodor won't go down into the crypts. The maester had only been half listening, Bran could tell. He lifted his eyes from the tube, blinking. Hodor won't go down into the crypts. When I woke, I told him to take me down to see if Father was truly there. At first, he didn't know what I was saying, but I got him to the steps by telling him to go here and go there, only he wouldn't go down. He just stood at the top step and said, Hodor, like he was scared of the dark. But I had a torch. It made me so mad, I almost gave him a swat in the head like old Nan is always doing. So, it's really fun. He's scared of the dark, scared of the cold, scared of the crypts. He doesn't want to be Hodor. And then so he saw the way the maester was frowning and hurriedly added, I didn't though. I didn't swat him. And Lewin says, good, Hodor is a man, not a mule to be beaten. In the dream, I flew down with the crow, but I can't do that when I'm awake. Bran explained. Why would you want to go down into the crypts? I told you to look for Father. So, again, Bran now is like Hermodr, the warrior figure who needs to go down into the crypts to find this beloved dead figure. Ned is Balder-like here. His death caused everyone, his wrongful death caused everyone great sorrow. And this happens right as winter is falling. Okay? And so Bran is like, I've got to go down into the crypts to find him. Pretty fun stuff. Okay, so oh yeah, this is one of the big ones that we want to read. So this is Hodor opening the door to get out of the crypts. So this obviously is going to be a big foreshadowing of the hold the door moment whenever it comes. And I believe this will be Clash. Should be the last chapter of Clash. Yes. Cleo is quite happy on my knee getting pets, by the way, for any of you who are concerned. Oh, just real quick, if you look at the Jon Solo video about Baldur's death, he talks about God of War and how Baldur in God of War, he is blonde and like sort of shining, but he's aggressive and violent. That is a reference to the older myth of Baldur, who again isn't tricked. He goes and finds the mistletoe and kills Baldur because he's the god of winter and he's supposed to kill the summer god, and that's what he does. So God of War is actually using correct mythology. I don't know if that's their intention. Probably. They're pretty good with their mythology. Yeah, and if Jon Solo figured that out, then it's not, Sorry, that sounded just... Jon Solo is really awesome. I learned from his channel. I just mean that, like, he's a YouTuber like me. He'll tell you he doesn't have a degree. He's just researching and doing mythology videos. Doing a great job. But yeah, so it's not a secret is the point. It's not like some weird theory. So, oh, I had a thought. Let's see here that I hadn't explained earlier. What was it? Let me go back to my notes in the beginning. Oh, the mistletoe. Yes, I wanted to explain the mistletoe. So the reason why Baldur, the god that represents, the sky god that represents, associated with summer, and the sun, Cleo, why is he vulnerable to mistletoe? Well, mistletoe, first of all, it's a winter plant. It's also a toxic, invasive plant. Like the famous ritual of the Druids cutting the mistletoe down from the oak tree. Mistletoe doesn't, it's not the oak tree. It's a vine that grows onto the oak tree. Cleo, stop it. You've lost your privileges. She's not biting me hard, but she gave me little nips. I don't know what your deal is. So mistletoe is one of the few plants that thrives in winter when the other plants die. And in the more northern climates in Scandinavia, it is not rare, but rather very common in winter. And so the reason why it is seen as a weapon of the winter god that helps kill the summer is because it's like the one plant that is thriving in the winter as the summer plants are dying. So they would have seen regular plants shriveling, dying, and then mistletoe in places taking their place. So think about the oak tree. In the summer, it's got oak leaves and probably the dormant mistletoe vine. And then as the oak leaves fall off, you're left with these bare branches and the mistletoe. And the mistletoe is now thriving. So it kind of looks like it's killed the oak tree temporarily. And of course, the oak tree is the tree of the summer king. Whether we're talking about Norse or Greek or Celtic mythology, oak trees are associated with summer everywhere. Probably because of their golden color and because they are just such useful and hardy trees in Europe or something like that. But the point is, you have this winter plant taking over the summer tree. So it's very wrought with symbolism. And this is why mistletoe is the weakness of Baldur. So there's definitely some extra Christmas mythology for y'all. I was pleased with how this worked out. At first, I just did the Hodor stream because I was like, oh, I should do a Hodor stream. But then I was like, oh, actually, this will be good for Christmas. And then also the mistletoe is cut down to make a substance that supposedly gives like immortality and cures disease and stuff. So there's echoes. The Druids also killed 2 white bulls in front of the oak tree after they cut down the mistletoe. So there's definitely some echoes of the Weirwood sacrifices and the Weirwood paste and blood sacrifice and all that stuff. That'll come back up. That's why I wanted to give it to you now. That will come up. But yes, that's the mistletoe. So now we're going to read. Oh, I've got it pulled up. It's in here on the Kindle. Okay, so Here in the... Oh, where do I want to start, actually? So they're down in the crypt. Oh, let me just find the quote again so I know where to start. Bran heard fingers fumbling at leather. That's what I want. Oh, I don't think I had searched it yet. This is the last. Okay. Bran heard fingers fumbling at leather, followed by the sounds of steel on flint. Then again, a spark flew, caught. Osha blew softly. A long, pale flame awoke, stretching upward like a girl on her toes. Osha's face floated above it. She touched the flame with the head of a torch. Bran had to squint as the pitch began to burn, filling the world with orange glare. The light woke Rickon, who sat up yawning. Okay, this is one of my favorite sentences, and paragraphs. And the next paragraph I should read too. When the shadows moved, it looked for an instant as if the dead were rising as well. Lyanna and Brandon, Lord Rickard Stark, Ed Wyle, their father, Lord Willem and his brother Artos the Implacable, Lord Donner, of course Donner means thunder, and Lord Baron, which also is a reference to thunder, just like the word Barrack, Lord Rodwell, One-Eyed Lord Jonel, that's a reference to Odin, Lord Barth, Lord Brandon, Barth Blacksword that would be, Lord Brandon and Lord Cregan, who had fought the Dragon Knight. On their stone chairs they sat with wolves at their feet. This was where they came when warmth had seeped out of their bodies. This was the dark hall of the dead, where the living feared to tread. In case I skipped over the obvious, when I said Hodor represents a king of winter, obviously Hodor, the Norse god, is a god of winter and coldness and darkness and blindness. And here the Stone Kings sit in the dark, in the cold, where they can't see anything. So you can already see how Hodor is primed to be analogous to the Kings of Winter. So this flame, a spark flew, caught, Osha blew softly, a long pale flame awoke, stretching upward like a girl on her toes. Osha's face floated above it. This is an important line. It is a parallel to similar lines where a flame awakens from wood in the middle of a bunch of symbolism that involves last hero resurrection. So here the flame awakens and it appears to resurrect the kings of winter from their stone thrones. And just in case it's not clear, the last hero's dozen and the kings of winter are the same thing. The same symbol, the same people. The original kings of winter were probably the last hero's dozen. The last hero was a Stark, etc., etc. They have so much overlap that I think they are the same thing. The idea of the Kings of Winter resurrecting is like the last hero resurrecting. So this flame that resurrects everyone, this is Nissa Nissa, essentially. And the flame is usually compared to a maiden. Jon has a cool scene when him and Corrin light the fire, and it's pretty as a maiden. Dany sees dancing women in her flames. There's always maidens dancing in the fire. This is Nissa Nissa's spirit. It always resurrects things and brings life into the world. Resurrects Azor Ahai, or the last hero, and all this stuff, okay? So here, the cool thing is that this is also a parallel to the scene where Bran sees what we think is Old Nan and Hodor and Dunk kissing in the Godswood. It's a girl stretching upward on her toes to kiss a knight tall as Hodor. That's the line. And so here, with Hodor sitting right next to Osha, we have a flame that's stretching upward like a girl on her toes. So George is giving us a direct parallel to Bran's vision of Nan and Dunk in the Godswood conceiving Hodor, or falling in love. I don't know. Let's not get technical. You get what I'm saying. Falling in love in such a way that would lead to the conception and birth of Hodor. And so here this scene is called out down in the crypts, Hodor being the god of the underworld. This is his realm. And so we see basically a story about his ancestry being symbolized here with Osha and her flame. And it also ties to Nissa Nissa and the resurrection of these kings of winter, because again, Hodor symbolizes a king of winter. We're going to see him later with a king of winter sword. ice eyes and a snow beard, fighting the whites and being controlled by a stark green seer. That's a form of the resurrected last hero, King of Winter. And so here in the next to the Kings of Winter, we have this nice confluence of ideas. Pretty sick stuff. But we're not done because Hodor hasn't held the door yet. So let's keep reading. And in the mouth of the empty tomb that waited for Lord Eddard Stark beneath his stately granite likeness, 6 fugitives huddled round their little cachet of bread and water and dried meat. Little enough left, Osha muttered as she blinked down on their stores. I'd need to go up soon to steal food in any case, or we'll be down to eating Hodor. Hodor, Hodor said, grinning at her. So, remember, I said that Hodor represents the original Weirwood net, which means that he is partly a green man. Because the green men and the original form of the Weirwoods, whatever they were, they probably didn't look like bloody, scarred faces. Made have looked like oak trees or green trees with green hands, probably Garth Greenhand. This is shout out Crowfoot's daughter. She put that together. The Weirwoods have bloody red hands, and they're obviously transformed trees that used to be green man trees. So, at the very least, we can say that the original form of the Weirwoods would have had leaves like green hands. And this is part of the name Garth Greenhand and the Knights of the Green Hand and all that stuff. Crowfoot's daughter, her YouTube channel is The Disputed Lands. Most of you guys will know that channel because her work and mine complement each other. We're looking at the books in the same way. And she has also, of course, my Dracomorph video is just a piggyback of her theory about the origins of the Dragon Bond, which is basically biblical canon in my head. So, shout out to The Disputed Lands. That was her more recent video about Garth Greenhand. She figured that out. So I've always felt like the Weirwoods had an original form that was different because I've been saying Azor Ahai corrupted the Weirwood net, or we can even say Hodored the Weirwood net. And that these bloody carved faces that make the Weirwoods look like they're in pain, it can't have been their original form. And so, yeah, it's not. Originally, they would have been probably white trees with green leaves and no scary faces. That's what I'm guessing. Maybe they were just brown trees. I don't know. They don't have to be white, I guess, but yeah, Amanda has been on a tear with videos lately. It's good to see her getting busy with the videos. So hopefully her channel will continue to grow. I know she just started a Patreon recently, and she's also, you can become a channel member subscriber. And let's see, Kelly Johnson coming back at me. Speaking of slaying giants, since the mountain is bigger even than Hodor, would Jon Snow need his berserker strength to take him down? Gosh, I don't even know if that would be enough. With the Valyrian steel sword and quickness, maybe, but you'd have to deflect at least 1 or 2 blows from Gregor's sword to get inside his guard to even hit him. That's why Oberyn was using the spear. So I don't know that Berserker Fury would be enough. If Gregor has a sword, the problem is reach. And it's a big problem. Good question, though. That's my judgment. That's why Oberyn chose the spear. Of course, he's Dornish good with spears, but that's why he was like, I can win. Hey, Minty Maelstrom, Merry Christmas. It's been a good stream. We've had gifted memberships and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so down to eating Hodor. So this is the thing. If Hodor's a green man, then this is like eating Jojen. The Weirwood paste being Jojen. Bran is eating a green man, kind of. That's what Jojen is. He's stand-in for a green man. He's part child of the forest. He's got green eyes and green dreams and all that. And that's part of Bran gaining the Weirwood net. So Bran is kind of like Azor Ahai. He's the parasitic green seer invading the Weirwood tree. And to do that, he's got to eat the green man. And so here they're talking about eating Hodor. Hodor said, grinning at her. He's smiling. He's fine. Is it day or night up there? Osha wondered. I've lost count of such. Day, Bran told her. But it's dark from all the smoke. My lord is certain. And then, okay, let's keep going. I need to skip ahead. Mira strapped the wicker basket to Hodor's back and helped Bran into it. easing his useless legs through the holes. And we'll talk about the wicker basket symbolism in a minute. He had a queer flutter in his belly. He knew what awaited them above, but that did not make it any less fearful. As they set off, he turned to give his father one last look, and it seemed to Bran that there was a sadness in Lord Eddard's eyes, as if he did not want them to go. We have to, he thought. It's time. Osha carried her long oaken spear in one hand and a torch in the other. A naked sword hung down her back, one of the last to bear Micken's mark. He had forged it for Lord Eddard's tomb to keep his ghost at rest, but with Micken slain and the Iron Men guarding the armory, good steel had been hard to resist, even if it meant grave robbing. Mira had claimed Lord Rickard's blade, though she complained that it was too heavy. Brandon took his namesakes, the sword made for the uncle he had never known. He knew it would not be much use in a fight, but even so the blade felt good in his hand. But it was only a game, and Bran knew it. The footsteps echoed through the cavernous crypts, and we'll get to Hodor's sword too, don't worry. The shadows behind them swallowed his father, as the shadows ahead retreated to unveil other statues. No mere lords, these, but old kings in the north. On their brows they wore stone crowns. Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt. Edwin, the Spring King. Theon Stark, the hungry wolf. Brandon the Burner and Brandon the Shipwright. Jorah and Jonas, Brandon the Bad. Walton the Moon King. Edarion the Bridegroom. The best name of all, Edarion. Iron, whose name looks like Euron. Iron Stark. Ooh, I should think about that more. Benjen the Sweet and Benjen the Bitter. King Edric Snowbeard. Their faces were stern and strong. Oh, I can tell you what it means. It's just more opposites. So Benjen the Sweet, Benjen the Bitter. You know, Brandon the Burner and Brandon the Shipwright. Brandon who made ships and Brandon who burnt ships. He's just showing us that, like, the cycle flip-flops and everyone trades places. You know, we see that with Renly and Stannis and Robert. They're both doing Summer to Winter King transformations. You know, Renly's all greened out and Summer Kinged, but then he dies and comes back at the Battle of the Blackwater as a fiery demon with, you know, all his soldiers are demons and the fires are reflecting and he's called up from some hell. And then there's a song of Renly's Ride about how the ghost of Renly, you know, begged for permission to see Marjorie one last time and came back to defeat Stannis and kiss Marjorie and then vanish. So always trading places, the two brothers. And so here in the crypt, we see some of these pairs. Now, Bran and Euron are very much a pair. Euron is the arch-villain to Bran's Seer. Euron is the warlock. That's how I see Euron, as a warlock god-man to Bran's Greenseer god-man. So I think that is why Iron Stark is here. Just to show you, like, he's Bran's opposite. Something like that. Okay. Let's keep going. Their faces were stern and strong, and some of them had done terrible things, but they were Starks, every one, and Bran knew all their tales. He had never feared the crypts. They were part of his home and who he was, and he had always known that one day he would lie here too. But now he was not so certain. If I go up, will I ever come back down? Where will I go when I die? Wait, Osha said, when they reached the twisting stone stairs that led up to the surface and down to the deeper levels where the kings more ancient still sat their dark thrones. She handed Mira the torch. I'll grope my way up. For a time, they could hear the sound of their footfalls. Okay, let me skip ahead. Hodor said nervously. Bran had told himself 100 times how much he hated hiding down here in the dark, how much he wanted to see the sun again, to ride his horse through the wind and rain. So yeah, Balder wants to see the sun again. Sun is his wife, Nana, the goddess. You know, he wants to see that again. He's down in the underworld, just like Balder when he's dead. But now that moment was upon him, he was afraid. He'd felt safe in the darkness. When you could not even find your own hand in front of your face, it was easier to believe that no enemies could ever find you either. And the Stone Lords had given him courage, even when he could not see them. So, what's your deal? What? Where do you want to go? You're going to fuck with my hat. I know you will. We'll see. We'll see. You want pets? No. This is not going to work. Okay. It'll be funny, though. So here we are. Okay. It seemed a long while before they heard anything again. Bran had begun to fear that something had happened to Osha. His brother was squirming restlessly. I want to go home, he said loudly. Hodor bobbed his head and said, Hodor. When they heard the footsteps again growing louder, after a few minutes, Osha emerged into the light, looking grim. Something is blocking the door. I can't move it. Hodor can move anything, said Bran. Osha gave the huge stable boy an appraising look. Might be he can. Come on, then. The steps were narrow, so they had to climb in single file. Osha led. Behind came Hodor, with Bran crouched low on his back so his head wouldn't hit the ceiling. Mira followed with the torch, and Jojen brought up the rear, leading Rickon by the hand. Around and around they went, up and up. Bran thought he could smell smoke now, but perhaps that was only the torch. The door to the crypts was made of ironwood. It was old and heavy, and lay at a slant to the ground. Only one person could approach it at a time. And so it begins. Girl, no. Let's see here. So it's made of ironwood. Only one person could approach it at a time. So it's definitely a symbolic crossing. Osha tried once more when she reached it, but Bran could see it was not budging. Let Hodor try. They had to pull Bran from his basket first so he would not get squished. Shout out minus squishers. Mira squatted beside him on the steps, one arm thrown protectively across his shoulders as Osha and Hodor traded places. Open the door, Hodor, Bran said, in a line that should have clued us off to what Hodor's name has something to do with. Open the door, Hodor, right there. None of us got it. The huge stable boy put both hands flat on the door, pushed, and grunted. Hodor? He slammed a fist against the wood, and it did not so much as jump. Hodor! Use your back, urged Bran, and your legs. Turning, Hodor put his back to the wood and shoved. Again. Hodor! He put one foot on a higher step so he was bent under the slant of the door and tried to rise. This time the wood groaned and creaked. Hodor! The other foot came up a step, and Hodor spread his legs apart, braced and straightened. His face turned red, like a weirwood tree, and Bran could see cords in his neck bulging as he strained against the weight above him. Hodor, Hodor, Hodor! From above came a dull rumble. This is giants waking in the earth, guys. Like, literally. Okay? Then suddenly the door jerked upward and a shaft of daylight fell across Bran's face, blinding him for a moment. So that's cool. Just layers here. Hodor is the blind god. Balder Bran in the underworld. Coming back is the sun hits Bran's face first. Another shove brought the sound of shifting stone, and then the way was open. Osha poked her spear through and slid out after it, and Rickon squirmed through Mira's legs, birth symbolism, to follow. Hodor shoved the door open all the way and stepped to the surface. The reeds had to carry Bran up the last few steps. The sky was a pale gray. The smoke eddied all around them. They stood in the shadow of the first keep, or what remained of it. On one whole side of the building had torn loose and fallen away. Stone and shattered gargoyles lay strewn across the yard. They fell just where I did, Bran thought, when he saw them. Some of the gargoyles had broken into so many pieces it made him wonder how he was alive at all. Okay, so Hodor starts stomping in a circle when he sees the destruction. Hodor, he whimpered in a small voice. They stood huddled together, with ruin and death all around them. We made enough noise to wake a dragon. Let's see if there's anything else about Hodor here. So I guess the idea is that Hodor is the one who opens the door in order for Bran and company to cross back into the land of the living from the land of the dead. So this is another clue that the hold the door moment would be at the wall, which is literally the barrier between the dead lands and the land of the living. So again, we think of the Black Gate at the Night Fort, or a simpler such Weirwood Gate at a different fort at the wall, because there might be more than one. And it makes sense. Yeah, Hodor is going to have something to do with holding and opening that door. And then that will be sort of like Bran's rebirth into the world. So let's go back to my notes. What was the one that I skipped? Oh, that was Yeah. Yeah, actually, that would be a good one to read now, because this is also about Bran's rebirth. And this will be in A Game of Thrones. Oh, Cleo, don't bite the microphone cord. That would be bad. That would bite it. You guys having fun? Are you enjoying the Hodor symbolism stream? I hope so. Yeah, Bran might have to crawl through the gate. Anytime Bran crawls, it's like merman symbolism because his legs don't work. Kind of like a mermaid dragging themselves around on land. So that's the whole thing about Bran swimming in the green sea is he's a merman. His mother is Cat Tully, who's a fish. So he's part fish and his legs don't work. So yeah, it makes him a merman, kind of. Yeah, so Hodor is the guardian at the threshold. Let me actually stop and just throw in. We're going to talk about the Walders in a minute. Remember, the big clue that Hodor is going to hold a door in the wall is that his real name is Walder. And that sounds like Waldor. Of course, there are two Walders in the story. Walder Frey, Big and Little Walder. They're not brothers, but they're cousins, and they have the same name. So very like Balder and Hodor, they are a pair of brothers with an important difference. One is big and one is little. It's Big Walder is little and Little Walder is big because they're named for their age, not their size. So it occurred to me that if Hodor's real name is Walder and Hodor, the Norse god, is part of a brother-brother pair, then of course Walder and Walder are going to be mirrors to that symbolism. And the phrase, of course, what are they? They are the Lords of the Crossing, which is, again, brings us back to the wall and the night for it. The literal crossing between the lands of the dead and the lands of the living, and also the Weirwood door in a more esoteric sense as a gateway to the realm of the dead. So, Odin, as a shaman, constantly journeys into the realm of the dead. That is what when a shaman goes into a trance and consults spirits, that is viewed as journeying into the realm of the dead. That is the same thing. So when these Ulfhednar and Berserker warriors go on their 9-day hunt and they simulate being dead and they simulate their clothes hanging on the tree and going into the realm of the dead, that is the same thing as going into shamanic trances. And they would be on various hallucinogenic substances on these hunts. They would also use chanting and fasting and rituals and things to put them in these altered states as well. There is some debate about what they were doing, but there was definitely some mushrooms involved in some of this stuff too. So the Walders are the Lord of the Crossing. And of course, Big and Little Walder are named after Lord Walder Frey, who is the head of this whole thing. And of course, Freya and Freyr are also Norse deities having to do with fertility, and Walder Frey has 1 million children, so that's part of it too, but that's a little bit neither here nor there for today. So Hodor, the idea that he's named Walder, and that's a clue about the Waldors, and then all the Walders in the story are Lords of the Crossing, it all ties together because the wall door is the crossing point. So there you go. I think I explained that. And we're going to read some of the Walder quotes in a second. But first, this is Tyrion coming to Winterfell in A Game of Thrones. This is after he's come back from the wall, he's made friends with Jon Snow, and he's got this design for a saddle for Bran that will allow him to ride a horse. They left old Nan in her tower room with her needles and her memories. Oh, let me talk about so many cool ideas here. So remember, I said that Nanna is the summer goddess that is the wife of Balder, right? And when Balder dies, she dies of heartbreak and ends up on the same funeral boat as well. And Balder's the sky god. Nanna is the summer. They go together. So in Ice and Fire, Old Nan is paired with Hodor instead of Balder. Well, Bran is Balder. They're all kind of in the same room together. Hodor, Bran, and Old Nan. But literally, Hodor is Nan's descendant. So Nanna is a summer goddess. Old Nan is like the winter version of that. She is old now. She is in her winter years. She's a crone, a wise crone or whatever. But she is still the symbolism of a Weirwood goddess, with all her weaving her stories and her needles and the spider symbolism. We talked about that in the ice spider symbolism. But basically, Old Nan is kind of like Nissa's spirit in the Weirwood net. You know, the spirit of the Weirwood net, something like that. So she complements Hodor. Her and Hodor together kind of tell you a lot about the Weirwoods and the original Nissa spirit of the trees and all that stuff. But it's all in this fallen state now because that reflects the Weirwoods. Hodor's been Hodored. Nanna's now no longer a summer goddess. She's living in the land of winter, but she's still telling her stories to Bran the summer child, who is, again, Balder. So, okay. So they left Old Nan in the tower room with her needles and her memories. And yeah, Old Nan's memories, Weirwood Net memories, they're both libraries of memories and stories. Hodor hummed tunelessly as he carried Bran down the steps and through the gallery, with Maester Luwin following behind, hurrying to keep up with the stable boy's long strides. Robb was seated in his father's high seat, wearing ringmail and boiled leather, and the stern face of Robb the Lord. Theon Greyjoy and Hal Smallin stood behind him. A dozen guardsmen lined the grey stone walls beneath tall, narrow windows. So here we have essentially last hero symbolism with Robb and a dozen guardsmen. In the center of the room, the dwarf stood with his servants and 4 strangers in the Black of the Night's Watch. So yeah, the Night's Watch are here to remind us of the last hero and his dozen. Tyrion the dwarf is a child of the forest figure. He's a dwarf. He's literally called a dwarf here, right? It says Bran could sense the anger in the hall the moment that Hodor carried him through the doors. Any man of the Night's Watch is welcome here at Winterfell for as long as he wishes to stay, Robb was saying in the voice of Robb the Lord. His sword was across his knees, the steel bare for all the world to see. So Robb is a king of winter here, with the sword across his lap, just like the statue. Even Bran knew what it meant to greet a guest with an unsheathed sword. Any man of the Night's Watch, the dwarf repeated, but not me. Do I take your meaning, boy? Robb stood and pointed at the little man with his sword, very menacing. I am the lord here, while my mother and father are away, Lannister. I am not your boy. If you are a lord, you might learn a lord's courtesy, the little man replied, ignoring the sword point in his face. Your bastard brother has all your father's graces, it would seem. Jon, Bran gasped from Hodor's arms. The dwarf turned to look at him. So it is true, the boy lives. I could scarce believe it. You Starks are hard to kill. You Lannisters had best remember that, Robb said, lowering his sword. Hodor, bring my brother here. Hodor said, and he trotted forward smiling as always, and set Bran in the high seat of the Starks, where the lords of Winterfell had sat since the days when they called themselves kings in the north. The seat was cold stone, polished smooth by countless bottoms, the carved heads of direwolves snarling on the ends of its massive arms. Bran clasped them as he sat, his useless legs dangling. The great seat made him feel half a baby. I'm not your buddy guy. Yeah, totally. So Bran's like a baby. He's born here, reborn as a king of winter. So it sort of complements the scene we just read in that sense. But the interesting thing is that he is receiving help from the Child of the Forest. So Bran and Robb are both like the last hero. Bran is the one who actually journeys north of the wall like the last hero. Robb is like the battle-ready last hero that leads the Night's Watch. So he's got his dozen soldiers. Bran comes and sits in Robb's chair when he shows up. So they're complementary. And then the Child of the Forest character, what is he doing here? He's trying to help Bran ride again. Gain mobility, essentially. And so he gives him the design for the saddle. And now Bran can ride. And there's an important line about the horse. With the right horse and the right saddle, even a cripple can ride. The word was a knife through Bran's heart. So there's Nissa Nissa symbolism, or death of Balder symbolism, because Balder dies, his heart is pierced by the mistletoe spear. His tears, he felt tears come unbidden to his eyes. And there's a lot about tears with Balder too. Everyone weeps for Balder, remember. I'm not a cripple. Then I'm not a dwarf, the dwarf said with a twist of his mouth. My father will rejoice to hear it. Greyjoy laughed. What sort of horse and saddle are you suggesting? Maester Luwin asked. A smart horse, Lannister replied. The boy cannot use his legs to command the animal, so you must shape the horse to the rider. Teach it to respond, to the reins, to the voice. I would begin with an unbroken yearling, with no old training to be unlearned. Give this to your saddler. Okay, so this whole shaping the horse to the rider thing, this is about the Weirwood net and Hodor as well. So it would be best to have an unbroken yearling. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. The Weirwood net is broken so that Azor Ahai can use it. He shapes it to himself as the rider. That is part of his defilement of the Weirwood net, Hodoring of the Weirwood net, driving the Weirwood spirit into the corner, just like Hodor is in the corner of his own mind when Bran uses his body. And so, hang on, I lost my train of thought. Oh man, I was going somewhere with that. Oh, the unbroken yearling thing. Okay, so the Weirwood net is broken and shaped to Azor Ahai's use. The same thing happens with Hodor. Okay, Hodor, his mind is broken, and that makes him easier for Bran to later warg and control. So it's very uncomfortable commentary, and this is the point of comparing the Hodoring, which is so sad, to the defilement of the Weirwood net. So we understand this is a tragedy and a defilement of what was and what could have been. And we're supposed to weep for it. You know, there's an environmental message there too, I suppose. So that's pretty much it for this quote then. Let me get back to the notes. Scared of the crypts. Hodor opening the door. Oh, yes. So when they're in that tumble-down tower, it's not Queen's Crown, just some tumble-down tower. It's the one where they had the wolf dream earlier. Hodor's making a bunch of noise. And so they send him outside to fight with his King of Winter sword, which hasn't been mentioned yet. So this is the first mention of Hodor's King of Winter sword. Hodor, said Hodor, swaying. Hodor, 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 Hodor. Sometimes he liked to do this, just saying his name different ways, over and over and over, stimming, if you will. Other times, he would stay so quiet you forgot he was there. Okay, so the others are silent and very sneaky. So other times, Other, he stays quiet and you forget he's there, just like the others. So that's very good. Oh, also, Hodor, Hodor. This is George giving us clues about hold the door, too. He says his name different ways because this is a contraction of hold the door. Hold the door, hold the door, hold the door, hold the door, Hodor, as we saw. So he goes around saying, Hodor, Hodor. I bet you he says, Hodor, Hodor. But George just didn't want to quite give it away. But I guarantee you that's what he says. Hodor. So, there was never any knowing with Hodor. Hodor, Hodor, he shouted. He's not going to stop, Bran realized. Hodor, he said, why don't you go outside and train with your sword? The stable boy had forgotten about his sword, but now he remembered. Hodor, he burped. He went for his blade. Oh, he had just been eating and burping, that's right. He went for his blade. They had 3 tomb swords taken from the crypts of Winterfell when Bran and his brother Rickon had hidden from Theon Greyjoy's Iron Men. Bran claimed his uncle Brandon's sword, mirror the one she found on the knees of his grandfather, Lord Rickard. Hodor's blade was much older, a huge, heavy piece of iron, dull from centuries of neglect and well spotted with rust. He could swing it for hours at a time. There was a rotted tree near the tumbled stones that he had hacked half to pieces. Even when he went outside, they could hear him through the walls bellowing, "Hodor," as he cut and slashed at his tree. Thankfully, the wolf's wood was huge, and there was not like to be anyone else around to hear. Okay, so, yeah, long and heavy sword. We already saw Hodor's long and heavy. I mean, that's not even subtext. But yes, so Hodor's sword, it's centuries old, of the Kings of Winter. So George is playing up the idea that this is a King of Winter sword and that it represents the original Kings of Winter from long ago. The fact that it has rust means that it has red on it. So it is a black and red sword, just like Ned's ice has turned into a black and red sword, Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail. And just like Azor Ahai's sword is a red sword, the red sword of heroes, which I say was actually a black sword made from Azor Ahai's, or Bloodstone Emperor's black bloodstone meteor. Sort of a opposite of Dawn. Dawn's a white meteor sword. I think Azor Ahai's Lightbringer was a black meteor sword. It burned red, so that's why the Lightbringer swords are mostly black and red. The Targaryen swords like Blackfire, black and red. Then Ned's sword literally died black and red and split in half. And then Arya looks at the comet and was like, man, it's red, just like Ned's sword. So Hodor, as a King of Winter, has a Lightbringer sword. And this is important. This is how you know Last Hero and Kings of Winter are the same people. Because it's the Last Hero that should have a Lightbringer type sword, right? Azor Ahai or the Last Hero. And so here we see Hodor with his King of Winter sword. And he's attacking a rotten tree. So this literally might be something they have to do in the heart of winter. There's going to be a frozen or corrupted weirwood tree or shade of the evening tree in the heart of winter, and some magic is going to have to be performed with it. It might involve a sword or somebody's spirit that would be like a sword, okay? So Hodor as a King of Winter attacking a rotten tree with Lightbringer, like that's important. One thing's also Daemon Targaryen in Harrenhal, making 13 slashes on the weirwood tree there that still bleed every spring. So there's your Last Hero's 13, cutting the weirwood tree, and then the Night King shows up on the 14th day, because Fortnight is Night Fort, and that's Aemon Targaryen, etc., etc. So that's a cool one. And there's another one later, too, in the north, which I don't think I grabbed, where Hodor is knocking the ice off of a tree with his sword. So that's, again, the idea of going to the heart of winter and doing some magical act on a frozen or corrupted weirwood tree, or that might be a shade of the evening tree or something like that. Okay, Tower Top. So let me take 30 seconds here and praise Garth the Green, and I'll be right back. And I'm back in my magical cloud of wizard smoke. All right, hello. So, tower tops. Towers are a big symbol. They are a symbol of, you guessed it, the weirwood tree, trees, towers. The important thing about trees, mountains, and towers from just a broad mythical symbol point of view is that they are things that unite the ground and the sky and that man can use to journey from the ground to the sky. So frequently holy places are on top of mountains. You go up the mountain, you're closer to God, who's usually God is the sky god, just like Walder. Okay, most gods either live in heaven, they are the sky god, etc. So you go up a mountain. Sacred trees work on many levels. You can literally climb a tree, but of course trees are associated with shamanism and all these different substances and meditation practices and things like that. So tower is just a man-made version of a tree or mountain. You can climb it like a mountain. It's vertical like a tree. And George is playing with trees, mountains, and towers all over the place. So the high tower sigil, for example, a white tower crowned with red flame. That's just a weirwood tree symbol. The high tower is a watchtower. You can see really far from it. Green seers watch and see really far from the tops of their trees, like Odin, etc., etc. So the important thing about the tower tops is that Bran's transfiguration scenes occur with towers. And in my King Bran series, I did the third one in the King Bran series is all about the tower symbolism. George is using the Tower Tarot card, if you're familiar with that, which is a card that represents traumatic change. There's people falling from the tower in a lightning bolt and all this stuff. Bran falling from the tower, combined with his dreams of falling from the tower, if you put all those symbols together, you have every single symbol from the Tower Tarot card. And in fact, there's two people falling from the tower, which may sort of be Bran and Euron, essentially, because Euron talks about leaping from towers and all this stuff as well. And again, they're sort of opposites. So, Bran has his first thing falling from the Winterfell Tower. He then goes into a coma. And when he awakens from the coma, it's in a dream where he's falling, but then flies and opens his third eye, and then he wakes up, right? So this is obviously a preview for him using the Weirwood Tree Tower to open his third eye in the north, right? And there's all this, Winterfell's towers are compared to a tree. He climbs the towers and is like, oh, Winterfell's like a big stone tree, and I'm the Lord sitting at the top of the tree, and I can see everything with my view that no one else has. You guys are hopefully very familiar. Yes, George is using probably lots of tarot cards. I've found a few, but his wife is a tarot reader, Paris. So George is an old hippie. So yeah, tarot cards are just built with mythical symbolism. That's, if you watch this show and you're familiar with all the mythical symbols that we're talking about regularly here and have never heard of tarot, you could dive into tarot and understand it all very quickly. Because they're just using all the classic mythical symbols and archetypes, and you'll be familiar with the concepts of how it works. And so anyway, that is what is most interesting to me about tarot, is the symbols of the cards and the concepts they represent. So another time, I have a few. I've got a few streams about tarot and ice and fire. I've got the King Bran 3, and if you look in the Norse mythology, there's another one in the Norse mythology playlist, I believe. Okay, so tower tops. Like I was saying, Bran's first three-eyed crow experience is all tied to the Winterfell Tower. Then they go to Queen's Crown. And at Queen's Crown, Bran wargs Hodor for the first time. Again, at the top of the tower. And again, we have lightning striking and a lot of overlapping symbols to Bran's experience falling from the tower. Bran is also warging the wolf, Summer, from the top of the tower in the middle of a storm where the lightning is striking, and he helps Jon with Summer, if you recall. Then, you should pull a card. Let's get weird. I don't know where no, I could, I guess. But okay, anyway. Then the third tower scene is at the Night Fort, which isn't a tower. Instead, it has the well. So it's an inverted tower. It's a tower that goes down. They start at the top of it and then climb down. And when Bran takes control of Hodor at the Night Fort, he thinks about the Queen's Crown scene and the lightning there. There's lightning again at the Night Fort, and Bran himself compares the two scenes. And of course, they have all the complementary symbolism. So there's this repetitive motif of Bran climbing the tower or being at the top of the tower, being struck by lightning, opening his third eye, and every time Hodor is a part of it. Okay? So this again leads me to think that this will all conclude at the Night Fort, and that the hold the door moment will be at the Night Fort. But let's go ahead and read some of these quotes associated with various towers, having laid out that preview. How long have we been streaming? 2 hours. Okay, that's not too bad. I was afraid it was going to say 3 hours. Sometimes it does that when I expect it to say 2 hours. Yeah, you guys pull some cards in the chat while I'm doing this. That'll be more fun. I'm not just going to turn into a... I mean, there are tarot reading channels and things out there. I'm not going to tread on their territory like that. Like I said, I'm more into the symbolism of it. So, tower tops. Let's see. Oh, this is a Kindle one. A man went before them, pounding out a slow, deep-throated marching rhythm on a drum that was bigger than he was. Boom, boom, boom. Bran watched them come from a guard turret atop the outer wall, peering through Maester Luwin's bronze far eye while perched on Hodor's shoulders. So let me just... This is Bran watching the Karstarks come to Winterfell. And we'll talk about the Karstarks in a second. But just check out the layers of tower symbolism. So Bran watched. Bran is a watcher. He's watching the Karstarks come from a guard turret atop the outer wall. So he's on top of a tower, but he's on top of Hodor's shoulders, also on top of a tower. So it's like this stacking here. So Hodor, symbol of a weirwood tree, carries Bran around all the time, just as Bran will ride the Yggdrasil, the weirwood. And here he is. He's on top of Hodor's shoulders, on top of a tower, using a far eye to look at the stars. So Luwin looks at the comet and the stars with the far eye. Here he's looking at the Karstarks, whose sigil is a white star. So let's read this bit, which is from a little further in the same chapter. It's got some really good stuff in it. This was a lot of fun to put together yesterday and this morning. Every Hodor quote I pulled, it was just like, oh man, there's so much here. So it says, he must march soon or not at all, Maester Luwin said. The winter town is full to bursting, and this army of his will eat the countryside clean if it camps there much longer. Others are waiting to join him all along the King's Road, Barrow Knights and Crannog men, and the Lords Manderley and Flint. The fighting has begun in the Riverlands, and your brother has many leagues to go. I know. Bran felt as miserable as he sounded. He handed the bronze tube back to the maester and noticed how Luwin's hair had grown on top. Or how thin Luwin's hair had grown on top, sorry. He could see the pink of scalp showing through. He's balding, in other words. And yes, there are some bald characters that are Balder-like, including the Magnar, I think. He's actually Hodor-like with his spear, his weirwood spear, but he's bald like Balder. Anyway, it felt queer to look down on him this way when he'd spent his whole life looking up at him. But when you sat on Hodor's back, you looked down on everyone. I don't want to watch anymore. Hodor, take me back to the keep. Hodor, said Hodor. Maester Luwin tucked the tube up his sleeve. Bran, your lord brother will not have time to see you now. He must greet Lord Karstark and his sons to make them welcome. I won't trouble Robb. I want to visit the Godswood. He put his hand on Hodor's shoulder. Hodor. A series of chisel-cut handholds made a ladder in the granite of the tower's inner wall. So this is the same tower they had just been watching from. Hodor hummed tunelessly as he went down, hand under hand. Bran bouncing against his back in the wicker seat that Maester Luwin had fashioned for him. Luwin had gotten the idea from the baskets the women used to carry firewood on their backs. After that, it had been a simple matter of cutting leg holes and attaching some new straps to spread Bran's weight more evenly. It was not as good as riding Dancer, but there were places Dancer could not go, and this did not shame Bran the way it did when Hodor carried him in his arms like a baby. So, a little bit more. Hodor seemed to like it too, though with Hodor it was hard to tell. The only tricky part was doors. Sometimes Hodor forgot that he had Bran on his back, and that could be painful when he went through a door. So, funny that... yeah, he's getting Balder, exactly. Bran can see him. It's funny that George is putting the word door next to Hodor so much, just begging us to figure it out, and no one got it. It drives me wild. So the reason why Bran is always hitting his head on the door frame when Hodor takes him through is because, like, hitting your head is a symbol for, like, going into a, shamanic trance or a coma or, opening your third eye, something like that, It's a knock-knock awakening type thing. So when Hodor goes through the door, that's Bran's rebirth back through the Black Gate and into the world of the living, if you will. So there's constantly the symbolism of Bran hitting his head. Or maybe the idea is that, like, Bran's going bald, with all these hits to his head. He's getting balder because of the head hitting on the door. I don't know if that's intentional, but... Anyway, so... Well, okay, what is Baldur's Gate? Isn't that some weird, like... That doesn't have anything to do with actual Balder, right? I should have looked this up, because we're talking about doors and stuff. It's a video game. Sorry. A video game. What's it about? I have no idea. I don't have time to figure this out. It's an RPG. Okay, yeah, I don't know what... It's a game based on D&D, and George incorporates many aspects of D&D into A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, that I know is true. Okay, so that's interesting. The game is based on D&D, so there could be some connections there. Interesting. All right. So, Heaven's Gate is a cult. Baldur's Gate is a video game. Got it. So, these handholds. So, it's interesting. Hodor is climbing down the tower. So Hodor, again, as a Lord of the Crossing, is mediating Bran's transit up and down the tower. And then the Wicker Basket. So this is Wicker Man stuff. And the Wicker Man is sort of slightly adjacent mythology. But again, it has to do with, a burning man that brings the spring and stuff like that. Bran and Jon both have Wicker Man symbolism. So this is a Wicker Basket. Maester Luwin got the idea from the baskets the women used to carry firewood, which implies Bran as firewood. And this ties back to, again, a burning wicker man or the weirwood as a tree that burns with the fire of the gods. Because remember, the red leaves, they're like hands, but they're also like a blaze of flame. And the weirwoods obviously do possess the fire of the gods, just like the Grey King myth about the burning tree, or Moses' burning bush that speaks with the voice of God. So burning Brandon is a thing. I have a whole episode in the Weirwood Compendium called A Burning Brandon, because Bran is literally the word brand. In Norse, it's brandr, and it refers to both sword and torch, or burning sword. So Bran's name, as well as meaning raven in Welsh, also refers to the Norse word for fire, burning brand, and burning sword. And of course, George compares the red comet to both a burning brand and a burning sword on multiple occasions. So Bran is like Lightbringer. He is an embodiment of the fire of the gods. And that makes sense, right? He's the last Green Seer. He's going to take on, I think, he's going to download the entire human Weirwood net consciousness into his brain, essentially. So, why do they decorate Weirwood trees for Christmas? Do they decorate Weirwood trees for Christmas? Kind of. Kind of. Come into the Godswood and find out. We'll decorate the trees with their entrails. That's how that works. All right, so So that's the basket. It implies Bran as firewood, as a wicker man, and the basket also is like the weirwood nest that he is eventually placed in. It's partially dead weirwood branches and roots. And it's basically, yeah, it's a nest or a basket. So Bran, being a raven, is in a little bird nest, or he's a piece of burning wood, burning firewood inside a wicker basket. You can see it so many ways. And of course, the whole wicker man thing, the rumor, we don't know if it's true, but Julius Caesar says the Druids would put a person inside the wicker man and burn them as a sacrifice. And the Druids would never do stuff. The Druids, I mean, they did practice human sacrifice. So could be true. We don't know. But the myth is definitely out there. So yeah, Bran's firewood, he's in the wicker basket. They're climbing down the tower. For near a fortnight, there had been so many comings and goings that Robb ordered both portcullises kept up and the drawbridge down between them. So even in the dead of night. So this is, again, about the night fort. For near a fortnight, night fort, there had been so many comings and goings that Robb ordered the doors held open, the portcullises to be kept up, and the bridges down so that people can cross even in the dead of night. So this is very definitely talking about the night fort and Hodor holding the door. And again, this back up a sentence. The only tricky part was doors. Sometimes Hodor forgot that when he had Bran on his back, and it could be painful when he went through a door. For near a fortnight, there had been so many comings and goings. Okay? So where is Hodor going to hold the door? It's going to be painful. It's going to be at the night fort, I'm pretty sure. Okay? I've been reading about an old Robert E. Howard character named Bran Mac Moore, meaning Bran of the morning. Lots of symbolism parallel to Weirwood stuff. So Robert E. Howard, like Lovecraft, is probably pulling from older mythology. Bran Mac Moore sounds like an Irish, like Finn McCool. It sounds like an Irish name. And Bran is Welsh mythology. So that's probably something he did not invent, but adapted or changed slightly. So yeah, this right here, only tricky part was doors. For near a fortnight, Robb had ordered the doors held open. Like, I told you, I found some new clues that Hodor is going to hold the door at the night fort. There's no question in my mind. So then it says, a long column of armored lancers was crossing the moat between the walls when Bran emerged from the tower. Karstark men following the lords into the castle. They wore black iron half-helms and black cloaks, patterned with the white sunburst. Hodor trotted along beside them, smiling to himself, his boots thudding against the wood of the drawbridge. The riders gave them queer looks as they went by, and once Bran heard someone guffaw. Okay, so yes, this is the Karstarks. It's hard to tell if they're Night's Watchmen or others. They're white stars, so the others have blue stars, and they're white, and they come from the north, just like the Karstarks come from the north. Also, Stark, Karstark. It seems like, Starks, others. And of course, the others and the Starks are related, so they're kind of cousins. But they're wearing black with black cloaks. So it's hard to say because originally, according to me, the others and the Night's Watch have a shared origin in Green Men. And check out my Secrets of the Night Fort, a Green Men of the Night Fort video. I don't want to try to explain the whole theory, but basically the reason why the others and the Black Brothers seem like sort of inverted opposites of each other is because, again, they both share an origin with a sacred order of green men that used to exist around the Night Fort Weirwood. There, I did just explain it simply. Just as there's a sacred order of green men guarding the Weirwoods on the Isle of Faces, I believe there originally was one at the Night Fort. Their sacrifice is what created the others and did a lot of bad stuff. So, we're at the Night Fort. Hodor is holding the door. Bran emerges from the tower. So, emerges from the well, in other words, which is an inverted tower. and the doors being held open, and then we see the Karstark men. So I guess that'd be Night's Watchmen, but it could just be talking about how the others and the Night's Watchmen both come from the same place, like the Weirwood door, the Weirwood Netherrealm or whatever. But yes, it's the Karstarks. And Hodor's trotting beside them. Hodor the other. So when I say that Hodor's like an other and he's like a last hero, the last hero is like an other, okay? The last hero is like the good other. Just like Jon has symbolism that makes him like the others. He's Jon Snow. He's going to be an Ice White for a while and have a frozen body. But he's fighting for the team living. Seems like the original last hero might have been like that. I mean, Cold Hands could be the damn last hero for all we know. Again, Cold Hands, an Ice White who was presumably possessed by the others for some amount of time, but now fights for the living as a Night's Watchman. So maybe that's who the Karstarks are. They represent people like Cold Hands. You know, undead Night's Watchmen. That's kind of who would be there at the Night Fort with Bran or the last hero. So, then we got a reference to the Isle of Faces. Oh yeah, the wolf. Bran puts 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled. So, okay, so people are mocking Bran, they're laughing at him. And so what does Bran do? He whistles for his wolf. And it says, summer came loping across the yard. Suddenly the Karstark Lancers were fighting for control, and their horses rolled their eyes and whickered in dismay. One stallion reared, screaming, his rider cursing and hanging on desperately. The scent of the direwolves sent horses into a frenzy of fear if they were not accustomed to it. But they'd quiet soon enough once summer was gone. The Godswood, Bran reminded Hodor. So, Bran with a little subtle revenge there. Kind of funny. Or maybe troubling, actually. Bran using the wolves to take revenge against people. That's not good, actually. Which of the archetypes usually discussed is your favorite? Oh, I don't know. I guess the Green Man, but... yeah, probably the Green Man. Okay. So, the Godswood. Bran glimpsed Mikken at his forge, his hammer ringing as sweat dripped off his bare chest. He'd never seen so many strangers, even when King Robert came. He tried not to flinch as Hodor ducked through a low door. They walked down a long, dim hallway, Summer padding easily beside them. The wolf glanced up from time to time, eyes smoldering like liquid gold. Bran would have liked to touch him, but he was riding too high for his hand to reach. So yeah, they're going down, and Bran can't touch Summer. See, that's the thing about naming the wolf Summer, is it works so well for just commentary on Summer. Bran can't touch Summer. He wants to, but he can't. The Godswood was an island of peace in the sea of chaos that Winterfell had become. So, the Winterfell Godswood, island of peace, just like the Isle of Faces and Isle of Weirwood Trees. George has said that we will see the Isle of Faces, and that presumably would be Bran. So, this could be interesting foreshadowing here. Hodor, or it could just be talking about the... Cleo. It could be talking about the Night Fort once having had a sacred order of green men, like the Isle of Faces did. Come here, girl. I'm actually going to put her back with Goose. So let me hit the music. Say goodbye to Cleo. And I'll be right back. Hi, good girl. Yeah, you're going to go hang out with Goose. It's not fair that you're out and he's not. All right. All right. Goose is just too loud. He's too loud. His screeching goes right to the microphone. It's that frequency. It's just, I can't. I love him, but it can't happen. You guys would not, you'd be tired of it real quick. So, all right. Hodor goes through the door. So they're in the Godswood. It's an island of peace. Hodor made his way through the dense stands of oak and ironwooded sentinels to the still pool beside the heart tree. He stopped under the gnarled limbs of the weirwood, humming. Bran reached up over his head and pulled himself out of his seat, drawing the dead weight of his legs up through the holes in the wicker basket. He hung for a moment, dangling, the dark red leaves brushing against his face, until Hodor lifted him and lowered him to the smooth stone beside the water. Okay, so this is crazy right here. First of all, he hung for a moment dangling. So he's hanging from the wicker basket on Hodor's back, which symbolizes a weirwood tree, but they're under the actual weirwood tree, and so the weirwood leaves are brushing his face as it says he hung for a moment dangling. So this is very clearly an allusion to Odin hanging on Yggdrasil here. And you might also infer the guilt of Bloodraven / the Green Seer, Hive Mind, or whatever, because the red-handed, the guilt of this, the bloody hands of this Green Seer inhabited tree brushing against Bran's head. Like, yeah, we're going to use you, and Hodor. And we are guilty of that. So that's interesting. And he's hanging there. Or you could say that, the old gods are marking him. There's different ways to interpret it. So it says, Hodor stomped through the trees and vanished across the Godswood. Well, actually, no. Let me see. Oh, yes. Across the Godswood, beneath the windows of the guest house, an underground hot spring fed 3 small ponds. Steam rose from the water night and day, and the wall that loomed above was thick with moss. That's interesting. So there's a green wall, and 3 hot pools. It says Hodor hated cold water and would fight like a treed wildcat when threatened with soap, but would happily immerse himself in the hottest pool and sit for hours, giving a loud burp to echo the spring whenever a bubble rose from the murky green depths to break upon the surface. So he's in a hot green pool. It's literally like the Green Sea. Remember, I was saying the Green Sea is warm. The other half of the Weirwood Night is the frozen pond. So this is kind of funny. Hodor, who's supposed to be the god of winter and the underworld, he doesn't like the cold ponds that symbolize the others, and he doesn't like the crypts. He likes the hot pools, the green pools. So it's just kind of a shout out. So yeah, it's a reference to what this is doing in the context of ice and fire. So Hodor, being a hairy, pelted man, he's like an earth man or a primitive man, an animal man, right? He's wearing hairy pelts. And he loves the green pools. So this is all like original Green Man stuff. And if he's going to symbolize the Weirwoods and the Hodoring of the Weirwoods, he's got to show us stuff from the before times, the original Green Men, the original Weirwoods. So he is kind of like a giant, like the Weirwoods are giants. Also, the Green Men are giants too. I think a lot of the tales about giants are references to Green Men who, if you've seen Pan's Labyrinth, Cernunnos is tall, right? He's buff too. If you've seen the statues, he's not short. So the Green Men could be some of the giants in the tales. When the children say the Green Men are the giants are our bane and our brothers, like the giants we see aren't the brothers of the children of the forest, but the Green Men might be. So I think that's a clue about that. Oh yeah, good point. There's 3 springs or pools beneath Yggdrasil. So here we got the 3 hot pools in the Godswood, plus the 1 cold one. Dante's pond, if you will. Okay, so yeah, Hodor hates the cold water. I think that's all I want to read from this. He's praying to the Weirwood. Talking about Rob. Yeah, I think that's all we need from this. This is all going on to other stuff. Okay, so let me go back to my notes. Oh, yeah, so this is definitely, yeah, this is the complimentary quote. Oh, that's right here. I don't have to look it up. So Hodor stands still. This is in Luwin's tower. They've just ascended the tower. So remember, the last scene started with them going down the tower and then into the Godswood. So now they're going up the tower. And it says, Hodor stands still. Bran grasped a wall sconce with both hands and used it to pull himself up and out of the basket. He hung for a moment by his arms. So echoing the language in the Godswood, he hung for a moment from the same basket until Hodor carried him to a chair, aka a weirwood throne. So, again, hanging from the wicker basket, hanging from Yggdrasil, sitting in a chair, sitting in a weirwood throne. Mira says her brother has the green sight. And of course, Jojen became the pace that enables Bran to have the green seer vision and wed the tree when he sits in his chair. So this is such heavy foreshadowing. Maester Luwin scratched at the side of his nose with his writing quill. Does she now? He nodded. You told me the children of the forest had the green sight. I remember. So they then start talking about the children of the forest and the green sight and Jojen and Mira. So, yeah. Another one with Hodor hating the cold pond. No sooner had Hodor entered the Godswood than summer emerged from under an oak, almost as if he had known they were coming. Oh, I've got to look this one up. That's right. I think this is the one where Mira pops out of the pond and Hodor is like, oh my God, no. Wrong book. Oh, I want book 2. Summer emerged from under an oak. So again, that's Summer the Wolf doing double duty. We just become immune to it because he says the word summer so much. Summer the Wolf, Summer the Wolf. It's always talking about summer the season though. So it says, no sooner had Hodor entered the Godswood. So Hodor, the god of the underworld, enters the Godswood. Then summer emerges from under an oak. And the oak, so Hodor, the winter god, enters the Godswood, which is named for the Weirwoods. That's the winter tree. Then summer emerges from under the oak tree, which is the summer tree. Almost as if he had known they were coming. So just constant cycle of the season stuff. Bran glimpsed a lean black shape watching from the undergrowth as well. Shaggy, he called. Here, Shaggy Dog, to me. But Rickon's wolf vanished as swiftly as he'd appeared. So even the wolves are doing the pair of brothers doing opposite things. Summer appears and emerges. Shaggy, the dark one, is in the undergrowth and then disappears. So, yeah, the Summer and the Winter King, they take turns. They do this. So, Rickon's wolf is gone. Hodor knew Bran's favorite place, so he took him to the edge of the pool beneath the great spread of the heart tree where Lord Eddard used to kneel to pray. Ripples were running across the surface of the water when they arrived, making the reflection of the weirwood shimmer and dance. So, Dancer is a horse that Bran rides with a special saddle made for him by the children of the forest. I mean, Tyrion. Hodor is a person that Bran rides that symbolizes a weirwood tree and likes to dance. Now, the weirwood tree is reflecting, shimmering and dancing, specifically in the pond. So in the green sea, in the water, the weirwood is dancing. Very cool. There was no wind, though. For an instant, Bran was baffled. And then Osha exploded up out of the pool with a great splash, so sudden that even Summer leapt back, snarling. So here we have to think again about the scene in the crypts where Osha wakes the flame that's like a tall maiden, and then her face appears above it. And I compared that to Nan in the Godswood, kissing Dunk. So now we're in the Godswood, And Osha is doing another Nissa Nissa resurrection thing, popping up out of the pond this time. So it's very similar. Hodor jumped away, wailing, "Hodor, Hodor," in dismay, until Bran patted his shoulder to soothe his fears. "How can you swim in there?" he asked Osha. "Isn't it cold?" So I think this is really cute because it's not spelled out. Like, why did Hodor jump away wailing? You might read it and just think, oh, he's surprised. Like, no, he hates the cold pond and the cold water. And I think it's meant to imply that he's like freaked out that she's in that pond. It's like, what are you doing in that one? And then Bran picks up on that. And he's like, "Isn't it too cold? As a babe, I sucked on icicles. Boy, I like the cold." Osha swam to the rocks and rose dripping. She was naked, her skin bumpy with goose prickles. Summer crept close and sniffed at her. I wanted to touch the bottom. "I never knew there was a bottom." "Might be there isn't." She grinned. I love that she doesn't answer. Because the bottomless pond is an important symbol too, like the womb of the world. The Dothraki womb of the world is also a black body of water with no bottom, supposedly. And it's a womb. So that just tells you everything coming out of this black pond, similarly, is being reborn. So Osha, yeah, definitely a rebirth thing here. So then, okay. I think that's it for this quote. Yeah, totally. So now we're getting to the Queen's Crown and Night Fort Hodoring. Do we want to do that one? Or do I want to do the Black Gate quotes? I think we can do these pretty quick because I've already referenced them. That's Storm. It was Bran's turn to tell a story, so he told them about another Brandon Stark, the one called Brandon the Shipwright, who had sailed off beyond the Sunset Sea. So we referenced this earlier. Brandon the Shipwright builds a fleet to see what's west of the Sunset Sea and never returns. Went to Ashai and hung out with Alyssa Farman, probably. We don't know. But he did not return. And then his son, Brandon the Burner, burnt the ships, and the Starks made no more ships. So this is talking about Bran in the Weirwood net. Previous Green Seers have sailed into the Green Sea and never returned and disappeared. But now that needs to be ended. Bran will download the Weirwood trees, download the hive mind that's in there, the human consciousness, into his Bran brain, and shut down the Weirwood net. So it's effectively going to be set on fire in some way. That may be part of the frozen tree in the heart of winter needs to be burned physically or spiritually. So there will be a burning of the Weirwood net in order to cleanse it. So that's what this is a bit about. Brandon the Shipwright. So making ships, that's like shaping the Weirwood net to be a vehicle to sail the Green Sea. That's Azor Ahai shaping the Weirwood net to his purpose. Bran Stark, the burning Brandon, he is Brandon the Burner. He's got to shut all this shit down. Okay, that's his role in the story. So dusk was settling by the time the duck, which is what they were eating, and the tail were done. And duck tails, woo. And the rain still fell. Bran wondered how far summer had roamed and whether he had caught one of the deer. Gray gloom filled the tower and slowly changed to darkness. Hodor grew restless and walked a while. So Hodor is coming to life. He's now walking around. He's the god of darkness. Again, Hodor being the winter god. So he's now walking around, striding round and round the walls. He's walking the walls and stopping to peer into the privy on every circuit as if he had forgotten what was in there. Jojen stood by, and that reminds me of the Night Fort where he's peering down the well. That's no doubt what this is supposed to be a parallel to. Jojen stood by the north balcony, hidden in the shadows, looking out at the night and the rain. Somewhere in the north, a lightning bolt crackled across the sky, brightening the inside of the tower for an instant. Hodor jumped and made a frightened noise. Bran counted to 8, waiting for the thunder. When it came, Hodor shouted, "Hodor." I hope Summer isn't scared too, Bran thought. The dogs in Winterfell's kennels had always been spooked by thunderstorms, just like Hodor. I should go see to calm him. The lightning flashed again, and this time the thunder came at 6. "Hodor," Hodor yelled. "Hodor, Hodor." He snatched up his sword as if to fight the storm. That's cool. So yeah, he's fighting the storm. I guess the winter storm of the others, one would extrapolate in parallel. And remember, this is Queen's Crown. So this is definitely a deliberate parallel to the Night Fort, because we already know those scenes are joined together. So then they're trying to get him to be quiet. "Can you get the sword away from him, Mira? I can try." "Hodor, hush," Bran said. "Be quiet. No more stupid hodoring." He gave the long sword to Mira meekly enough, but his face was a mask of confusion. Jojen turned back to the darkness, and they all heard him suck in his breath. And then there's men in the village. They say other men, armed. So those must represent the others, I would assume. And then it says, "I saw them when the lightning flashed." Hodor starts hodoring again. They're talking about, can the others reach us in the tower, in the Weirwood net, essentially, or in Bloodraven's cave, maybe we should think about. Lightning slashed the sky. Hodor whimpered. Then a clap of thunder rolled across the lake. Hodor is roaring, clapping his hands over his ears, and stumbling in a circle through the darkness. "No Hodoring." Hodor moaned. "Hodor." Mira's trying to catch him. He's screaming at the lightning. "Be quiet," Bran says in a shrill, scared voice, reaching up uselessly for Hodor's leg. Reaching. Hodor staggered and closed his mouth. He shook his head slowly from side to side, sank back to the floor, and sat cross-legged. When the thunder boomed, he scarcely seemed to hear it. The 4 of them sat in the dark tower, scarce daring to breathe. "Bran, what did you do?" Mira whispered. "Nothing," Bran shook his head. "I don't know." But he did. "I reached for him the way I reached for Summer. He had been Hodor for half a heartbeat. It scared him." "Something is happening across the lake," said Jojen. "I saw a man pointing at the tower." "I won't be afraid. He was the Prince of Winterfell. A man grown in a warg." So let's see here. So that's the first time he body snatches Hodor. And then he goes on to warg Summer and help Jon in the battle after that, as the lightning is striking. So then we're going to jump ahead to the second Hodoring, which is at the Night Fort. So you can see the foreshadowing here is that Hodor is going to hold the door as Bran is being threatened by the others. That's kind of what we just saw. Like, Bran's being threatened by the others. That's when he jumps in Hodor. The lightning is striking, which is a symbol of the power of the gods, the fire of the gods. And that scene is parallel to this one at the Night Fort. It says, Bran wriggled across the floor, dragging his dead legs behind him until he could reach out and touch Mira on the floor. And this is as he's beginning to hear the noise of Sam and Gilly coming up the well shaft. Hang on a quick. I just needed to have a good cough and didn't want y'all to see that. Let me clear my throat. All right. So he's crawling across the floor like a merman, like we said earlier, right by the Night Fort well. He's hearing these noises that he's afraid of, and he's trying to reach Mira. She woke at once. He had never known anyone to wake as quick as Mira Reed or be so alert so fast. Bran pressed a finger to his mouth so she'd know not to speak. She heard the sound at once. He could see that on her face. The echoing footfalls, the faint whimperings, the heavy breathing. Mira rose to her feet without a word and reclaimed her weapons. With her three-pronged frog spear in her right hand and the folds of her net dangling from her left, she slipped barefoot toward the well. Jojen dozed on, oblivious, while Hodor muttered and thrashed in his restless sleep. She kept to the shadows as she moved, stepping around the shaft of moonlight as quiet as a cat. Bran was watching her all the while, and even he could barely see the faint sheen of her spear. I can't let her fight the thing alone, he thought. Summer was far away, but... He slipped his skin and reached for Hodor. It was not like sliding into summer. That was so easy now that Bran hardly thought about it. This was harder, like trying to pull a left boot on your right foot. It fit all wrong, and the boot was scared, too. The boot didn't know what was happening, and the boot was pushing the foot away. He tasted vomit in the back of Hodor's throat, and that was almost enough to make him flee. Instead, he squirmed and shoved, sat up, gathered his legs under him, his huge, strong legs, and rose. I'm standing. He took a step. I'm walking. It was such a strange feeling that he almost fell. He could see himself on the cold stone floor, a little broken thing. But he wasn't broken now. He grabbed Hodor's longsword. The breathing was as loud as a blacksmith's bellows. So there's the sword forging thing. You know, Sam's breath is like a bellows, and then he's picking up the longsword at the same time. Interesting. From the well came a wail, a piercing screech that went through him like a knife. So here is Balder in the body of Hodor, and again, pierced through the heart like a knife. So this is the death of Balder reenacted again. A huge black shape heaved itself up into the darkness and lurched toward the moonlight. And the fear rose up in Bran so thick that before he could even think of drawing Hodor's sword the way he'd meant to, he found himself back on the floor again, with Hodor roaring, Hodor, 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 the way he had in the lake tower whenever the lightning flashed. So there's the direct call out to the last scene, like I said. And yeah, Bran is just knocked out of his, last hero body, if you will, by this sound that went through him like a knife. Interesting. So there's, call it Nissa Nissa, call it Balder symbolism, but we see that repeatedly. And then it says, but the thing that came in the night was screaming too and thrashing wildly in the folds of Mira's net. Let's see, do we need to keep reading this scene? It's a cool scene, but Hodor is still shouting, Hodor, Hodor, while everything is happening. And it's the emergence of the Night's Watch. So I guess the point is that earlier, Hodor dropped the rock down into the well. Mines of Moria style, shout out Lord of the Rings. And Bran talks about, you might have woken something up. So later, when this is happening and these noises are coming up out of the well, Bran thinks, oh, this is the thing that Hodor woke. So, yeah, the emergence of this dark shape from the underworld is tied to Hodor, the god of darkness. And then Bran tries to fight it with Hodor, but fails. I don't really have anything super dramatic to add, except for that, again, this idea of Bran taking over Hodor keeps happening at the same symbolic place, at the tower top, which is where Bran opens his third eye and stuff. And it all seems to lead back to the Night Fort here. But it gets much worse than that, as far as this is going to happen at the Night Fort. So check this out. So this is getting into the Walder Frey stuff. Again, two Walders, they're cousins, not brothers. Hodor's real name is Walder, and Balder has a brother, Hodor. So there's the twin brothers thing is important. So yes, they're dappled gray coursers. Of course, both Walders ride a gray horse. Sleipnir is a gray horse. So their dappled gray coursers were swift, strong, and beautifully trained. Side by side, they charged the quintains. Both hit the shields cleanly and were well past before the padded butts came spinning round. Little Walder struck the harder blow, but Bran thought Big Walder sat his horse better. He would have given both his useless legs for the chance to ride against either. Little Walder cast his splintered lance aside, spied Bran, and reined up. Now there's an ugly horse, he said of Hodor. Hodor's no horse, Bran said. Hodor, said Hodor. Big Walder trotted up to join his cousin. Well, he's not as smart as a horse, that's for certain. A few of the White Harbor lads poked each other and laughed. Hodor. Beaming genially, Hodor looked from one fray to the other, oblivious to their taunting. Hodor, Hodor? Little Walder's mount whickered. See, they're talking to each other. Hodor and the horse. Maybe Hodor means I love you in horses. In horse. You shut up, Frey. Bran could feel his color rising. So that's interesting. Little Walder spurred his horse closer, giving Hodor a bump that pushed him backward. What will you do if I don't? He'll set his wolf on you, cousin, warned Big Walder. Let him. I always wanted a wolfskin cloak. So here we go. Remember, I said that Hermodr, this warrior who goes into the woods, into the realm of the dead, on Sleipnir to resurrect Balder. His act is echoed in the ritual of this hunt, where the Ulfhednar and the Berserkir, put their clothes in the tree, hang their clothes in the tree, dress up in death makeup, and go hunting bears and wolves to skin them. And so here is Walder saying, I've wanted a wolfskin cloak. That would make me an Ulfhednar. So Hodor is a horse, like Sleipnir, like Yggdrasil, and Walder is an Ulfhednar. So that's pretty cool. So just like Hodor running around naked in the Godswood, Walder here is like, yeah, I'd love a wolfskin cloak. This is a good one. Hodor agreed happily. He ducked to get his great shaggy head under the door. Hodor was nearly 7 feet under the door. Hodor. He's really trying to get us to put it together. Hodor was nearly 7 feet tall. It was hard to believe that he was the same blood as Old Nan. Bran wondered if he would shrivel up as small as his great-grandmother when he was old. It did not seem likely, even if Hodor lived to be 1,000. When Bran sees the Blackgate Weirwood face, he says the face is shriveled up as if a man lived to be 1,000 but never died. And here he says, I wonder if Hodor will shrivel up if he lives to be 1,000. So it makes me think that Hodor will literally hold the door, possibly by being eaten by the Blackgate or becoming the new person in the Blackgate. Did this happen in the past? Will Hodor become a new Blackgate? Will he be is there a Weirwood passage where he'll be sacrificed and become the Blackgate? He basically is being likened to the Blackgate. The Blackgate is a door in the wall, a Weirwood door in the wall. So Hodor is either going to hold that door, or he's going to hold or become another door like it. So, Barris Aurelius with a quote from George Martin. So telling Hodor to hold the door is more like hold this pass, defend it when enemies are coming, and Hodor is fighting and killing them. A little different, but the same idea. So yeah, it has to do with Hodor holding the door. He's going to be in this passageway, potentially the Blackgate. Remember, it's a mouth. It's closed at first. It opens so that they can walk through it. So potentially what could happen is that everybody else could walk through the gate, and then it's closing, and Hodor is inside holding the Whites back, and it essentially eats him so that he would be eaten by the Blackgate. And so that would make sense, this foreshadowing that is talking about Hodor living to 1,000 and having a face like the Blackgate. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think, especially with that quote that you just gave me, you can sort of picture it. He's going to get eaten by the Black Gate, so to speak, fed to the Weirwood Gate like Bran. And this is the whole thing about Balder and Hodor, is as summer and winter kings, they can't really be alive at the same time. They have to alternate. So, Hodor is killed at a certain point, I believe at Ragnarok, and then Balder is resurrected, again, in some versions. So yeah, it's kind of like Hodor has to remain in the Death Realm in order for Bran and Summer to be reborn and enter the Greenlands again. They can't both come back. Bald the door. Totally. Bald the door. Hold the door. But yeah, you see what I mean. Hodor and Bran, as a Balder-Hodor pairing, are winter and summer. And so yeah, it makes sense that Hodor's got to stay in the Death Realm when Bran comes back and brings Summer with him. So I don't think Summer the Wolf will die, by the way, like on the show. Yeah, and that makes sense too, because Hodor's whole life has basically been fed to the Weirwood, right? He's been a tool of the old gods and Bran, circuitously through time. So him getting eaten by the Black Gate would just be a literal depiction of, his life. So it says, Theon Greyjoy had once commented that Hodor did not know much, but no one could doubt that he knew his name. And Theon later says, you got to know your name. Old Nan had cackled like a hen when Bran told her that and confessed that Hodor's real name was Walder. No one knew where Hodor had come from, she said, but when he started saying it, they started calling him by it. It was the only word he had. They left Old Nan in the tower room with her needles and memories. And then this is the other quote that we read earlier. So here's a different one. And this is talking about Dancer the horse. Hodor would lead her while Bran sat strapped to her back in the oversized saddle the imp had drawn up for him. But for the past fortnight, he had been riding her on his own, trotting her round and round and growing bolder with every circuit. So this sounds like Bran leaving Hodor behind at the Night Fort. Hodor used to lead Bran, but for the past fortnight, he's been going at it alone. So that's what I think this passage is suggesting, is that Bran leaves Hodor behind at the Night Fort, which is what all these other passages are suggesting also. Oh, and that would make Hodor like the new Lord of the Crossing, if he's eaten by the Black Gate. Right? And the Walder phrase, Lord of the Crossing. No, he wasn't always slow. Presumably, he's only been slow since the Hodoring. So this one I called Hodin, because this Hodor gets beaten up by the Ironborn and gets one-eye symbolism and Weirwood symbolism. When no one else rushed forward to pledge service, they were dismissed with a warning to do their work and made no trouble. Hodor was given the task of bearing Bran back to his bed. His face was all ugly from the beating, his nose swollen and one eye closed. Hodor, he sobbed, between cracked lips. So yeah, bloody Weirwood lips, as he lifted Bran in huge strong arms and bloody hands and carried him back out into the rain. So bloody hands like the Weirwoods, bloody hand leaves, one eye like Odin, and the cracked lips. Yeah, so he's definitely got the Weirwood face after he's been beaten up by the Ironborn, and that's probably comparable to him battling the Whites and the others, and then being swallowed by the Black Gate and becoming part of the Weirwoods with the Weirwood stigmata. And then the last quote is the Lord of the Crossing game. Which is back in book 1. Symbolism of Hodor. This is fun. Oh, maybe it's in book 2. Are you guys having a good time? We got 291. So we've had about the same amount of people all day, which is cool. It means you guys must have appreciated this Christmas Eve stream. And to those of you watching on the rewatch, hope that family holiday is going well. All right. Book 2. So it starts with Bran howling like the wolf up in the tower, and the maester's like, fine, howl if you want to. Howling lost his savor once Bran was alone. And it says, I did welcome them, he told himself. I was the Lord of Winterfell, a true lord. He can't say I wasn't. When the Walders had arrived, it had been Rickon who'd wanted them gone. Let's see, he had offered them meat and mead and a seat by the fire, and even Maester Luwin had said afterward he'd done well. Only that was before the game. The game was played with a log, a staff, a body of water, and a great deal of shouting. So this is the Lord of the Crossing game. They play it on the pond in front of the Weirwood. So the symbolism is not hard to pick up. This is Weirwood crossing symbolism. They're trying to cross a body of water, like the Green Sea, okay? A log is a tree that's become a bridge. The Weirwoods are bridges. The water was the most important, Walder and Walder assured Bran. You could use a plank or even a series of stones, and a branch could be your staff. You didn't have to shout, but without the water there was no game. As Maester Luwin and Sir Roderick were not about to let the children go wandering off into the Wolfswood in search of a stream, they made do with one of the murky pools in the Godswood, so not the cold one. Walder and Walder had never seen hot water bubbling from the ground before, but they both allowed it would make the game even better. Both of them were called Walder Frey. Big Walder said there were bunches of Walders at the Twins, all named after the boy's grandfather, Lord Walder Frey. So that's very much like the others, how they're all twins. Twins to the first. There's a bunch of twin Walders at the Twins. Just like, and here we have a twin set of Walders. It's like Balder and Hodor. I mean, George must have a lot of fun writing this shit. That's all I can say. Both of them were called lots of twins at the Walders. We have our own names at Winterfell, Rickon told them haughtily when he heard that. Owned by a 4-year-old. That was Rickon dropping the mic. I love that. We have our own names here at Winterfell. Oh yeah, Lucas Hunt, the underground river in Bloodraven's cave. Yes. Well, so that was always my other candidate for where Hodor is going to hold the door, like hold the pass, would be so that everyone can get on the boat. Maybe there'll be another Weirwood gate down there. And in that case, the underground river would lead them all the way back to the Night Fort, perhaps at the bottom of that well. So that's my other theory for, Hodor, instead of getting swallowed by the Blackgate Weirwood face, it would be at the bottom of that long 600-foot climb where there's that underground river. Perhaps Hodor will hold the door there. Perhaps there's a Weirwood face elsewhere down in those tunnels. But I really think it'll be at the Night Fort. So that would mean, yeah, the river, yeah, brings in the ferryman and the river Styx, totally Barris Aurelius. So yeah, I wonder if Hodor will make it onto the boat. That's what he'd have to do to get back to the Night Fort. Wait, Balder's twin is Hodor, and Hodor's real name is Walder, and the twins is where the Walders are from? Yes, you got it, Darth Dethington. You got it. It sounds like you tuned in late. But yes, that's it. That's what's going on. It's a stack of repeated motifs. So, the way their game was played, you laid a log across the water, and one player stood in the middle with the stick. He was the Lord of the Crossing, and when one of the other players came up, he had to say, I am the Lord of the Crossing, who goes there? And the other player had to make up a speech about who they were and why they should be allowed to cross. And this is exactly what Walder Frey does. So this is just a game modeled on their dad's haranguing or whatever. The Lord could make them swear oaths and answer questions. They didn't have to tell the truth, but the oaths were binding unless they said mayhaps. So the trick was to say mayhaps so the Lord of the Crossing didn't notice. Then you could try and knock the Lord into the water, and you got to be the Lord of the Crossing, but only if you'd said mayhaps. Otherwise, you were out of the game. The Lord got to knock anyone into the water anytime he pleased, and he was the only one who got to use a stick. Kind of a messed up game, to be honest. In practice, the game seemed to come down to mostly to shoving, hitting, falling into the water, along with a lot of loud arguments about whether or not someone had said mayhaps. Right, because the whole thing is, if you say it so that the Lord of the Crossing doesn't notice, then he's going to think you didn't say it because he didn't notice. So, of course, you're going to argue about it. Little Walder was Lord of the Crossing more often than not, and he's the big one, so he's a bully. He was Little Walder, even though he was tall and stout, with a red face and a big round belly. Big Walder was sharp-faced and skinny and half a foot shorter. He's 52 days older than me, Lord Walder explained, so he was bigger at first, but then I grew faster. We're cousins, not brothers, added Big Walder, the little one. I'm Walder, son of Jamos. My father was Lord Walder's son by his fourth wife. He's Walder's son of Merit. His grandmother was Lord Walder's third wife, the Craycall. He's ahead of me in the line of succession, even though I'm older. Hope more female characters Why? Why is... This is the same troll. He always suggests the same thing. He's like, I love it when the women get tortured and killed. It's awesome. Just a sick human being that feels the need to come and say horrible things every once in a while. Thanks, buddy. Glad to know you still exist with your horrible thoughts. Merry Christmas. May you find your way to not being such a terrible person. That's just, I'm going to be nice today. I'm going to just leave it at that. So, thanks for the $5, I guess. Only by 52 days. Okay, so, let's see. And neither of us will ever hold the twins, stupid. I will, Big Walder declared. We're not the only Walders either. Sir Stevrin has a grandson, Black Walder. He's fourth in line of succession, and there's Red Walder, Sir Emmon's son, and Bastard Walder, who isn't in the line at all. He's called Walder Rivers, not Walder Frey. Plus, there's girls named Walda. And Tyr. You always forget Tyr. He's Waltyr, not Walder, said Walder. Big Walder said airily. And he's after us, so he doesn't matter. Anyway, I never liked him. So that's Tyr, a reference to another Norse god. He's the one who puts his hand in Fenrir's mouth and gets it bitten off. And obviously people have likened that to Jaime losing his hand, the hand that he pushed Bran, the wolf, out of the tower with. So there's more Tyr stuff, right? Let's see. He's Walder, not Waltyr. And that's interesting. Tyr has his hand bitten off by Fenrir, and Hodor is holdered by Bran, who is Fenrir also. Merry Christmas from Michael James. Cheers and shout out. Sir Roderick decreed that they would share Jon Snow's old bedchamber since Jon was in the Night's Watch and never coming back. Bran hated that. It made him feel as if the Freys were trying to steal Jon's place. He had watched wistfully when the Walders contested with Turnip the cook's boy and Joseph's girls, Bandy and Shurna. The Walders had decreed that Bran should be the judge and decide whether or not people had said mayhaps, but as soon as they started playing, they forgot all about him. So that's interesting, Bran as the judge, because of course Eddard sits in judgment and the Starks are judges and swinging the sword, and you know, it's much is made of Bran watching Ned do this at the beginning. So Bran may have to pass sentence on someone. I'm not sure who that would be. Perhaps like, the Greenseers, I guess. Let's see here. The shouts and splashes soon drew others. Paolo the Kennel Girl, Kane's boy Kaelin, Tom too, whose father Fat Tom had died with Bran's father at King's Landing. Before very long, every one of them was soaked and muddy. Paolo was brown from head to heel with moss in her hair, so it sounds like Child of the Forest status. Breathless from laughter, so she's symbolically dead now, breathless. Bran had not heard so much laughing since the night the bloody raven came Oh God, Bloodraven is here. If I had my legs, I'd knock all of them into the water, he thought bitterly. No one would ever be lord of the crossing but me. So, Lady of D, I haven't been able to catch many live streams, but I'm glad I caught tonight's. Love your content. Thank you very much. Finally, Rickon came running into the Godswood, Shaggy Dog at his heels. He watched Turnip and Little Walder struggle for the stick until Turnip lost his footing and went in with a huge splash, arms waving. Rickon yelled, me now, I want to play. Little Walder beckoned him on, and Shaggy Dog started to follow. No, Shaggy, his brother commanded. Wolves can't play. You stay with Bran. And he did, until Little Walder smacked Rickon with a stick, square across his belly. Before Bran could blink, the black wolf was flying over the plank. There was blood in the water, and the Walders were shrieking red murder. Rickon sat in the mud laughing, and Hodor came lumbering in, shouting, Hodor, Hodor, Hodor. After that, oddly, Rickon decided he liked the Walders. They never played Lord of the Crossing again, but they played other games. So, let's see what happened. It sounds like Shaggy bit one of the Walders. Oh, and Rickon even takes the Walders down into the crypts. So that's interesting. The Walders being echoes for Hodor, and they're being shown into the crypts. That makes a sense. Oh, and then Bran gets mad and says, you had no right. That was our place, a Stark place. So yeah. So the Walders getting bit by the wolf at the crossing is probably akin to Hodor succumbing to the others in whites, or getting eaten by the Weirwood face at the crossing. One or the other, take your pick. But that's what I would say that it is. Happy holidays from Mantis Toboggan. Appreciate you. Somebody sent me a $1 super chat and said Trump 2024. It's in all caps, so I assume it was Trump 2024. Oh, I'm in a good mood today. That's all right. You can't bring me down with your casual support of fascism. Glad that's beyond debate now, by the way. Trump's going to give out qualified immunity to all policemen. It's like, we don't have to debate if it's fascist anymore. Let's see. Oh, another PayPal. And no, that doesn't mean that I love everything that Joe Biden's doing, because I do not. So don't come at me. Mark Eimerman says, Happy New Year, LML. Remind everyone to sub and like the stream, because I have a feeling you just need a tiny nudge to get that sweet 100K. That's true. I'm almost to 100K, and I do forget to say it. So please like and subscribe. Yeah. Hodor, Hodor, Hodor. That's what I say to you. Hodor. Hodor upon it. Garth Greenlung, happy holidays. Appreciate you too, man. Solid supporter of the channel, Garth Greenlung. In fact, I will praise Garth for you. Oh, I've got to refill that one. So last call for Hodor questions. That's pretty much what I came to say. Oh, I forgot the Ice Eyes one. I forgot to look it up. Let me do it right now. I told you about it, but let me read it to you. Just so you believe me. Maybe there'll be something new there we didn't notice. I'm going to need to find it with the search first, because the Kindle only picks up exact matches. So this is going to be Dance, and Hodor and Tears will do it. Yes. So this is the next time Bran wargs Hodor, essentially. So this is important that we read it. Welcome to Squisher, Barris Aurelius. Shout out. Appreciate you, buddy. See you on Twitter there. Happy Christmas and Merry New Year, Elena Pristane of Bravos. Appreciate you, Elena Pristane. Longtime supporter. Okay, so this is on the way up to Bloodraven's cave entrance. Everything's going crazy. There's whites everywhere. Hodor's being attacked. He's not defending himself because Hodor doesn't. He's gentle. There's a story about when he was picked on by some boys in the Wintertown and he wouldn't defend himself. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to do something before I read this. ADD. We're on bonus time now. Bonus time. ADD. Bonus time. Okay, let's see. Okay, Summer was tearing at the one that he'd brought down, its face between its teeth. No one was paying any mind to Bran. He crawled a little higher, dragging his useless legs behind him. If I can reach the cave. Hodor, came a whimper from somewhere. Oh, Hodor, came a whimper from somewhere down below. A good question, Sri Lankan. I'll answer that in just a second. That's a good discussion topic to wrap up the stream. Good question. So Hodor whimpers, and then it says, and suddenly he was not Bran, the broken boy crawling through the snow. Suddenly he was Hodor, halfway down the hill, with the white raking at his eyes, roaring. He came lurching to his feet, throwing the thing violently aside. It went to one knee, began to rise again. Bran ripped Hodor's long sword from his belt. Deep inside, he could hear poor Hodor whimpering still. But outside, he was 7 feet of fury, with old iron in his hand. He raised the sword and brought it down upon the dead man, grunting as the blade sheared through wet wool, rusted mail, and rotted leather, biting deep into the bone and flesh beneath. Hodor, he bellowed, and slashed again. This time he took the wight's head off at the neck, and for half a moment he exulted, until a pair of dead hands came groping blindly for his throat. Bran backed away, bleeding, and Mira Reed was there, driving her frog spear deep into the wight's back. Hodor, Bran roared again, waving her uphill. Hodor, Hodor. Jojen was, and that must be weird for Mira, because suddenly Hodor's like giving orders. That's never happened before. Yeah, shout out Layla, starting the stream late, shouting out the new squishers. So let's see. Hodor, Bran roared again, waving her uphill. Hodor, Hodor. Jojen was twisting feebly where she laid him down. Bran went to him, dropped the long sword, gathered the boy into Hodor's arms, and lurched back to his feet. Hodor, he bellowed. Mira led the way back up the hill, jabbing at the whites when they came near. The things could not be hurt, but they were slow and clumsy. Hodor, Hodor said with every step. Hodor, Hodor. He wondered what Mira would think if he should suddenly tell her that he loved her. That is such an incredibly jarring but well-written line. Like, because we got to remember, Bran can't walk. These moments when he's in Hodor, only at great need, are also the only moments when he feels alive. And he's had this crush on Mira, but he doesn't feel he's inferior. He can't, he's a broken boy and he's too young, so he can't confess his love. But suddenly when he's in Hodor and full of power and battle rage, full of Odor, exactly that, battle bravery and fury, he imagines confessing his love to Mira. And that's why he thinks of it now, because for once he feels physically strong. And this is the incredible sadness of this, to get into Sri Lankan's question about what is George doing story-wise with Hodor. Is his intention to show a person being used by powers beyond his comprehension, to show a small person being important despite his limitations? Probably a little bit of both, I would say, because all these characters are used in different ways for the purposes of fate or the magic or things like that. Bran is used by Bloodraven and the Greenseers. Hodor is being used by Bran here. So it's kind of like necessity. The Targaryen prophecy wreaks all kinds of havoc on the Targaryens. So that's like fate using them essentially to create the prince that was promised. It's sort of how George sees magic and prophetic need and all this, the belief in a higher purpose. Like, it really takes people for a ride. And so you can sacrifice yourself to like a higher cause, like a good cause that helps other people, or to gain power for yourself. Either way, you're paying a price, kind of. But with Hodor, so to get back to what I was saying, Bran is a broken boy and Hodor is a broken boy in different ways. Hodor's mind was broken when he was young. Bran had his legs broken when he was young. They're probably around the same age, to be honest. And so there's an incredible sadness with Bran using Hodor because, one, Hodor is being used. Two, Bran is somewhat conscious of what he's doing, and so there's a guilt to it. But you can also understand Bran's desperation to have legs and to be strong and to be a knight. That's what he always wanted to be, was a knight. So yeah, it's just really, really sad and messed up. There's layers of sadness and messed up with this idea of Bran wanting to use Hodor. Because when they're in the caves, he thinks about touching Mira while being in Hodor. And it's because he can't do that in real life. And it's just like, yeah, it's really sad. I'll come back to that a little more in a second, but I got some Christmas PayPals rolling in from Nick. Thank you. And yeah, Mark. Okay, I read that one. So going back to the quote. He wondered what Mira would think if he should suddenly tell her that he loved her. And it's also like a really twisted version of like the warrior with the sword and the babe on his arm, right? So this is George's messed up version. This Bran inside of Hodor wishing he could put his arm around Mira while they fight whites with a sword. Like, George loves taking fantasy tropes and giving us really messed up versions of them. So that's what this is. This is the cover of a fantasy novel with a muscular sword hero and a babe. That's what this is, kind of. So up above them, flaming figures were dancing in the snow. And the whites, Bran realized, someone set the whites on fire. Summer was snarling and snapping as he danced around the closest, a great ruin of a man wreathed in swirling flame. This is a direct call out to Mirri Maz Duur's tent of dancing shadows, where Dany lost her baby. There's a shadow of a burning man and a wolf. And here, Summer the wolf is fighting with a burning white in the snow. And it's Summer the wolf in the snow with a burning white. So there's layers of ice and fire symbolism with both characters. And it's this archetypal fight that Bran is watching. It's pretty interesting. And the reason why we'd be comparing it to Mirri Maz Duur's tent, this has to do with the shadows dancing. Remember, the shadows come to dance, my lord, the shadows come to stay. Those were dancing shadows in that tent. And I think what we're talking about here is basically the birth of the others. Those would be the dancing shadows. And, the whole thing with Dany's tent, I mean, that's a whole different subject, but that all ties into her birth of the dragons and the comet returning and all that stuff. So here we have this call out with this man and the wolf dancing right as they're fighting the whites in the north. I guess Bran is kind of analogous to the sacrificed baby, maybe? I'm not sure. Or I guess that'd be Jojen. Yeah, because Jojen's being carried like a baby here. Yes, Bran went to him, dropped the longsword, gathered the boy into Hodor's arms. So Hodor is carrying Jojen like a baby into the cave, just as Jorah carried pregnant Dany into the tent of dancing shadows. And that is where Dany lost her baby, as a sacrifice for something more magical to be born. So here we're going into Bloodraven's cave. Jojen will be sacrificed so that Bran, the God-man Greenseer, can be born. So they are very much parallel scenes with the cave in Mirri Mazdir's tent. There you go. Boom. So he shouldn't get so close. What is he doing? Then he saw himself sprawled face down in the snow. Summer was trying to drive the thing away from him. What will happen if it kills me? The boy wondered. Will I be Hodor for good and all? Or will I go back into Summer's skin? Or will I just be dead? The world moved dizzily around him. White trees, black sky, red flames, everything was whirling, shifting, spinning. So this is cosmic axis tree. The holiday of the world tree is it's the cosmic axis upon which the stars turn. So everything is spinning here. It's kind of like the world shaking off its axis. This Ragnarok language is probably the best way to say it. And Bran is thinking about dying. Let's see, white trees, black sky. He could hear Hodor screaming, Hodor, 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 Hodor. A cloud of ravens was pouring from the cave, and he saw a little girl with a torch in hand darting this way and that. For a moment, Bran thought it was his sister Arya, madly, for he knew his sister was 1,000 leagues away or dead. And yet there she was, whirling, a scrawny thing, ragged, wild, her hair a tangle. Tears filled Hodor's eyes and froze there. Merry Christmas, Carol, thank you. So tears filled Hodor's eyes and froze. So now he's got ice eyes as this archetypal battle is taking place. So he is now fully a king of winter, inhabited by a Stark spirit, with a black and red King of Winter sword, fighting whites, ice eyes. Everything turned inside out and upside down, and Bran found himself back inside his own skin, half buried in the snow. The burning white loomed over him, etched tall against the trees in their snowy shrouds. It was one of the naked ones Bran saw in the instant before the nearest tree shook off the snow that covered it and dropped it all down upon his head. And the next he knew he was lying on a bed of pine needles beneath a dark stone roof inside the cave. So, there you go. Pretty dope stuff. And that is Hodor Ice Eyes. There is a frozen snot beard too. That passage will be shorter. Let's see if I can find that. I think it happens a couple of times. Sorry, Cleo. 3.5 hour stream. It is what it is. Behind the ranger, Mira Reed wrapped her arms around her brother to shelter him from the wind and cold with the warmth of her own body. A crust of frozen snot had formed. Oh, this is Jojen's frozen snot. Well, he doesn't have a beard, though. That doesn't count. Okay, so for this happens with the dead, the mutineers that Cold Hands kills. They have ice beards too. Thick beards crusted with ice. Those are dead Night's Watchmen. So those are like Kings of Winter or Zombie Night's Watchmen. The raven shrieked again. Hodor whispered Hodor. He had his hands tucked beneath his armpits. Icicles hung from the brown briar of his beard, and his mustache was a lump of frozen snot, glittering redly in the light of sunset. So he's got an entire beard, and the whole thing is frozen. He's got icicles So that is Hodor, Snowbeard. So I told you, Ice Eyes and Snowbeard. And that is... Oh, Karsnark gets it too. Yeah, when Jon's got him in the ice cell. But that makes sense because the Karstarks are, as we saw, like Night's Watchmen and Winter Wolves and stuff like that. So with black cloaks. Cool. There you go. There you go, folks. There you go. Also, when Karstark is in the cell, he actually mirrors Jon. He's foreshadowing Jon his own fate in the cell. So Jon will become an Ice Eyes and a Snowbeard as well. I.e. a Frozen Night's Watchman, King of Winter type. Catching the tail end of this, Danielle says, appreciate all the dope content. There you go. I do it for y'all. I love doing what I do. So, yeah. Like I said, last call for questions. Oh, a couple more PayPals from Danielle. Happy solstice. Your channel pulled me through some challenging, heartbreaking life events. Oh, that's awesome. Been a silent watcher. Only recently became active in the comments. Oh, that's awesome. Welcome to it. Orange Tabby. Oh, cool. Right on, Orange Tabby. Cheers. Appreciate you. So, yeah. Lots of happy feelings going around. I do appreciate the support, guys. Yeah, my family's across the country. So, yeah. I definitely like doing these streams. Y'all are kind of my family, I guess is what I'm saying. So I love spending it with you. And I know a lot of people out there are separated from their family or estranged even. And sometimes the holidays are tough. So I do like making content. And I will have a video out this week, by the way. I should hype that up. It's going to be rating the dragons on House of the Dragon, Sports Center style. Be rating all the dragons in order, ranking them and assessing them, how they would fare against each other. And then next Sunday, New Year's Eve, me and Greyways Tim will do a fun stream. I'm not sure what we'll do. Probably some Q&A and some fun stuff. Oh, Cleo. I'll be right there. All right, guys. Love you much. I'm going to get running. It's late. Cleo's upset. And I do appreciate you guys being with me. All 300 of you, all 3 hours and 33 minutes. Let me see if I can end it at 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds. I believe that I can. Like and subscribe, please. You've been a beautiful audience. Merry Christmas. Just missed it. I said it.